Welcome to another edition of AVRant. My name is Rob H, and I am here with...
Lee Overstreet, hurricane pinch hitter for AVRant. It's a special week, and we wish Rob all the best. I mean, Tom all the best. I wish Rob all the best, too, but I wish Tom
thanks.
all the best. He's got a lot of stuff going on because of a big, giant hurricane.
Yes. Well, right off the bat, I will say this is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. That's what our podcast is. But yes, we want to update everybody right away on Tom Andry's situation. He is the normal host of this podcast. He lives in Florida, where Hurricane Irma, of course, made landfall on Sunday morning there. So he is fine. His family is fine. He sort of, moved stuff off the floor in his place in case there was flooding. He knows for a fact because of his Ecobee thermostat that he can check online that his place did lose power.
Yes, definitely.
And he was posting updates on Facebook. So facebook.com/AVRant podcast. He's actually got videos that he shot on his phone as he went along. And you know what? That rolls us right into our listeners of the week, because the first person we're going to thank this week is Clint DeBoer.
That's right.
You might know that name. He was the former editor-in-chief of Audioholics. He's now the editor-in-chief and basically the guy running the whole thing of ProToolReviews.com. If you have any interest in anything to do with power tools or Pro Tools of any kind, check out ProToolReviews.com. The very least he deserves is a click on his website from everyone, because he let Tom and Tom's family stay with his family at his place in Florida, but they were a little bit more out of the path of Hurricane Irma. So a huge thank to Clint DeBoer for helping Tom out with that situation. They've been good friends for years and years, but still. Awesome.
I just clicked on his website. That's a good-looking website.
It is. Clint knows what he's doing.
I mean, seriously, that's a good-looking website. That's good information. Didn't even think to go look for something like that, and now I know.
That's right. So yeah, check out Pro Tool Reviews. That's the least we can all do. We want to thank some other listeners of the week as well. Before we do that, just want to mention there's every possibility that folks sent in donations to this podcast, AVRant. It's entirely possible, but Tom is the only one who sees those.
Right.
And he has some more important things at the moment. Your donations are hugely important to us, but survival trumps even that.
I know this is a really important podcast, but life, it ranks just above this podcast.
It does. Things have to be ranked, especially in the internet age, and it's amazing that actual life and death comes above even that. But yes, if you donate to the podcast, first of all, thank you. Second of all, your name will be mentioned. As soon as we know what those names are, which means as soon as Tom is back, everyone is getting a mention. So thank you so much to everyone who did. I'm sorry I can't name you right now. I don't have the list in front of me.
Probably a big, long list when that finally happens.
It might be. That it would not be a terrible thing to help out Tom there, because he's probably got some stuff that needs replacing. So that would go a long way. If you want to donate to the podcast, come to avrant.com. That's our website, avrant.com. Over on the right-hand side, there is a buy us a cup of coffee link. It takes you to PayPal. You can, of course, use a PayPal account if you have one, but you don't have to. You can just use a credit card. It'll all be processed by PayPal. We don't see any of your information, nothing like that. Right. Other folks helped out the podcast in other ways. Josh Pollard, who is over at the Digital Media Zone. He does the Entertainment 2.0 podcast and a new podcast that he's doing called Story Players, which is cool. He let me preview a episode -1, because they put out an episode 0, but this was an episode -1. And what they're doing is, if you've ever listened to a podcast where they sort of do a recap and a review of, say, a TV show, episode by episode.
Sure.
It's that type of format, but for story-driven video games.
Oh.
Which is cool. I haven't really seen that done before.
I haven't either.
Lots of places talk video games or review video games, but they don't go through it in sort of a sequential, here's what we did. Because, there's so many games now, you go through it and, you have choices. So they talk about the choices they made. Then people can write in and say the choices that, they made that were different. So
there's an enormous amount of video game watching going on, live streaming and stuff, but I haven't heard of that particular way of presenting information. That'll be good for readers.
Yeah, so the Digital Media Zone, Story Players, his new podcast. But yeah, Josh Pollard, he told Accessories for Less that he found out about them through us. And of course, that has gone great. I I certainly hope Mark over at Accessories for Less did not send the Pioneer Elite receiver that he is intending to give to Tom. I hope he didn't send it right now.
No, that'd be a bad time. Although probably didn't get there, and it'd be okay. They'll store it. UPS or somebody.
One would think, but
one would hope.
Who knows? Maybe there's that brave UPS driver out there who's just chucking things over people's fences in the midst of a hurricane while they fly away.
Well, that's how they deliver it anyway. You wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
And also want to thank Christian and Chris. Both of them took a recent survey that SVS sent out to customers. And SVS, of course, we know that they know about us. Well,
that's right.
One of the questions was, what site or resources helped you when researching your decision? Select all that apply. AVRant podcast was there amongst, much bigger names.
I love that. I love that. It's such a significant issue here on the show. SVS
we had our own checkbox. So appreciate that. So
look for that on Accessories for Less eventually too.
Hopefully, yeah, that'd be cool.
Possibly on Monoprice, cool. A little thing you can click on. Are you here from AVRant?
So, yes, we are AVRant. We answer home theater and AV questions. And to get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. Please email us at question@avrant.com. That's our email address. That's the best place to reach us. You email us there, question@avrant.com. You'll get your questions onto the podcast. That's how that works. You can contact us individually if you want to. For some reason, I'm rob@avrant.com. Tom is tom@avrant.com. And I can be reached on Twitter. I'm @FirstReflect. Tom is @avrant_Tom. And our guest host here, Lee Overstreet, he has a Twitter.
I do. It's my Twitter handle is @LeeOverTweet because my name's Overstreet. @LeeOverTweet. And I just realized we're doing this show and I just posted something rather sort of political and controversial. But if you can handle that, didn't even think of that when I posted it. But whatever, So
you're allowed to post whatever.
I know. We keep that kind of thing off the show. For
the most part, yeah.
Yeah. Because I hate when I'm listening to a podcast or watching a show and all of a sudden I'm hit by somebody's politics. I don't want to do that to anybody. Yeah. You don't want to be all disappointed. You're just trying to find out about receivers, and all of a sudden you're angry because of some political issue. Don't want to do that to anyone. So yeah, Lee @LeeOverTweet. Find me and say hi. And I do occasionally talk about electronics and computers. I did a whole unboxing series of tweets with my new computer.
And also on Twitter, you can reach our producer, Austin. He was gracious enough to co-host with me last week, so he's Austin Pond. Austin is spelled with an E, not an I, so it's Austin Pond, @Austin Pond. And Austin has his own podcast as well. It's called We Watch Movies. It's a very confusing title. Lee, what is that about?
It's all about the legal issues facing organic dairy farmers. That's right. Heavy. So there's a series of attorneys they have on to talk about all the regulations and so forth. It's fascinating. It goes deep. So
that's why they called it We Watch Movies.
Exactly. What else would you call it?
Movies.
You're the funniest guy on the internet.
Yeah. I might have just killed this show in Tom's absence.
And everyone just hit stop.
And there is nobody left because of that horrible pun.
No, I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Lee likes puns. We know this.
I do, yeah. My whole Twitter handle is a pun, So.
That's right. So, I think that's contact info. We've thanked our listeners of the week. Why don't we step right into the news?
Cedia news. As expected, Sony and JVC's new projectors were announced for the North American market. The Sony models that were announced at IFA for Europe were the VW260, no relation to the car manufacturer, 360 and 760. Those are now the VW285, 385, and 885 for North America because it's got to be slightly different. Prices are a bit different than what we had expected, though. The 285 does indeed hit the $5,000 U.S. price point. That's starting to be the new price point for 4K, making it the least expensive genuine 4K resolution offering. The 385, which adds a dynamic iris and motorized lens memory features, is $8,000. That's €7,000. And the laser-based 885 is $25,000, which is a little disappointing given its €15,000 price. Still the least expensive laser-based genuine 4K projector, though. That is a big difference when you go from €7,000 to €8,000 for that 385. But you got to go €15,000 to $25,000 to get the laser one.
Yeah, that's not straight exchange rate, so I'm not sure what happened there.
Wanting to make more money.
I don't. Maybe the original euro price was misquoted. I'm almost wondering that.
Or it could be that American rich people are really rich compared to European rich people. That's kind of true.
In any case, though, it's still $10,000 less expensive than last year's least expensive genuine 4K laser-based model, which was $35,000. So that's still pretty healthy price erosion year over year. But
am I remembering correctly that a laser-based one is getting more of the, what is it, Rec 2020 spec?
Yeah, wider color, and then of course the advantages of laser being longer lifespan. It doesn't dim as quickly over time. It starts up more quickly and shuts off more quickly. So there's sort of just user level things that are nicer with a laser based system, and then the longer lifespan is sort of the main thing. But yeah, generally wider colors. Right,
but probably not $17,000 better for us mere mortals.
Hefty asking price.
That's a big jump. Yeah. Other news. JVC's new model numbers are X590, X790, and X990. Once again, they're also available via custom installers as the RS440, 540, and 640. As we detailed last week, or as Rob and Tom detailed last week, it was Rob and Austin. That's right.
That's right.
Not a lot of changes from last year, but prices have come down. $4,000 for the X590, $6,000 for the X790, and $8,000 for the X990. So those are coming on down as things always do.
Yeah, so those are the eShift, now eShift 5 models. So the panel itself is 1080p. It's 1920 by 1080, but they wobble it.
Yes.
So you end up with 4 million individual pixels instead of only 2 million individual pixels. Still lamp-based, but if you're wondering, hey, wait a second, didn't you just say there was a VW285 from Sony that's genuine 4K and it's $5,000, meaning it falls in between the X590 and the X790? Well, the JVCs still have deeper black levels. They still have higher contrast. They're still brighter. And the $5,000 one thing I didn't put in the rundown there, though, but the VW285, that $5,000 model from Sony, does not do P3 color. It doesn't do the digital cinema color. It's a little bit wider than Rec 709, so technically it's a wide color gamut, but it's not the full P3 color, which the JVC X790 is, but the 590 is not. So the lowest end models from both lack the wide color, the P3 color.
Okay, but so it sounds to me like if resolution is your most important thing, maybe it's the Sony for you.
Yeah.
But if the punch of the colors and the contrast is more important to you, maybe the JVC is more for you in that general price range. I mean, what's $1,000 amongst friends, right?
Competition's always good. So
that's right. Yeah. And here's another brand name. Epson is not updating their LS10500 or 5040UB this year. Sorry to all the people that were told to wait. They did announce an interesting new 1080p model, though. The LS100 is an ultra short throw model with a laser light engine rated at 4,000 lumens for $3,000. That is interesting. With a laser light engine.
That is not HDR, because it's 1080p only. It doesn't do HDR. It doesn't do wider color, but it's a bright, ultra short throw and laser driven 1080p projector. So if you have a room with significant ambient light, but you still want a huge 100 or 120 inch screen,
and you don't have a lot of room on the ceiling at the right distance, so you can get close and you can get bright.
Exactly. And ultra short throw is a help because now the projector is like a foot away from the screen.
Right.
So you just don't have all of that ambient light in between the projector and the screen, washing out the image even more. So for certain people, that's going to be an attractive thing because ultra short throw, especially with a laser light engine and 4,000 lumens, which is significantly bright, at $3,000, that's a pretty good value. But yes, we had told plenty of people who were eyeing the 5040 UB especially, we were like, wait for CEDIA because they'll probably announce something. And even if they, if and when they do, even if you still want a 5040 UB, then the prices will come down, right? Well, that's not happening. The price is staying the same, or at least the retail price is. They're not replacing that model this year. So the people who were like, hey, I want a 5040 UB, have at it. There is no longer any reason to wait. So.
Until they announce something 2 months from now for no reason.
CES isn't that far away. January,
that's right. Let's see. Let's move on to Optima Optima further expanded their 4K DLP projector lineup with the UHD65. That one uses a laser light engine with 3,000 lumens, output for $5,000. And I assume that is not a short throw. It's a more standard.
No, that's a regular one. But yeah, that's using the 4K DLP chip, which does start with 4 million pixels, and then they wiggle those to create 8 million pixels. So the chip itself doesn't have the 4K resolution inherently, but they're wobbling a 4 million pixel chip to actually get 8.
We need a new word. I think maybe wixels for wiggle pixels. So you have real pixels, and then you got wixels, which are wiggle pixels.
It could be. We've been calling it Wobble K over on AVS. They call it Faux K, like FAUX, Faux K.
Cute.
So yeah, we're all coming up with our separate names. But yeah, another one to add to Optima. Pretty reasonable price for actual 4K resolution. 3,000 lumens, plenty bright. That's brighter than the JVCs or the Sonys. So again, might fit someone's needs quite nicely.
Yeah, if you're in that 3,000 to 6,000 range in a projector, you've really got to consider your room in detail, and also consider what's the most important aspect of a picture to you.
Yeah,
some people want that resolution, some people want that greater contrast. So it's all about really know what you want.
Yeah.
Here we got something via Infinite Gary. Monoprice announced new Monolith series products. We already mentioned their new Monolith THX subwoofers a few weeks ago, but now they've added new portable and desktop headphone amp / DACs with THX certification and direct correction, $230 and $400. A new M565 planar headphone with an over-the-ear and open back design for $200. M300 in-ear planar headphones. I don't see how planar headphones fit in your ear, but they do. $150. And some new in-wall speaker and tube amp models. I took a look at those planar headphones. I like big, full-size headphones. And that's kind of a price range that a human can get to, like me. They look beautiful. I just don't know about the open back, because I not only want it to sound good for me, I want it to sound like nothing to the other people in the room. So keep that in mind if you're looking at a open back design. Means other people are listening as well.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and as well, noise around you will get into your headphones. It's not going to block out the world outside you. They do have previous models that were sealed with the planar design. Tyle Hertzen over at Inner Fidelity did have a listen to them. He's like, yeah, they're good. For the price, they're pretty okay. But he prefers, like, Hi-Fi Man is another brand that makes planar headphones, and their least expensive ones he preferred over the Monoprices. But that's that's one guy's opinion. It's a very knowledgeable opinion. But it's one guy's opinion. But so interesting to check out. But yeah, they are bringing these technologies down to lower prices. So good to see from Monoprice. And interesting to see Monoprice at CEDIA. Who would have thought, right?
I know. Monoprice used to just be where I would think of, like, oh, I need an HDMI cable. And now it's like, do they have what? Receivers? Let's go look, Okay, so moving on. Some late breaking news here. Mark Henninger from AVS Forum heard a demo of the Emotiva RMC-1 Pre-Pro at CEDIA. It's $5,000. And the demo was 7.1.4. But Emotiva explicitly said the RMC-1 will support 9.1.6, quote, by the end of the year, unquote. I'm putting the big quotes in the air. This is Emotiva we're talking about. So which year that ends up being is still a question mark.
That's my copy, because,
No, I like that. It has now been 2 years since they first said their current XMC1 Pre-Pro would be upgraded to support Atmos, and that hasn't been released yet. So, but nevertheless, a clear indication that 7.3.6 won't be the only 16-channel configuration allowed. They'll let you do 9.1.6 by the end of maybe this year,
which is exactly what I was hoping for. When we heard 16 channels, subwoofer inclusive, I was definitely hoping 9.1.6 would be an option. So Mark Henninger did get a photo. This is the unit they were showing at CEDIA. He got a photo of the back of it. Now, it might be a little hard to make out, but at the moment, they still have it labeled as width. So they've got the front wide speakers in there, and then they've got it labeled as front height and rear height, and then right, center, and left subwoofers. So they
What?
presently have it labeled as a 9.3.4 configuration. That's what that would work out to be. But Mark checked, and he said they explicitly said verbally 9.1.6. Now, that's a lot of people on their own forums and on AVS forum have been asking for that to be an option, so they heard the customers' cries. So that's nice. That's exactly what I want too. If there's going to be 16 channels, I want them to be 9.1.6.
Yeah,
so,
you don't need a million subwoofer channels.
No, you really just need one.
Just need one, yeah. Okay, Disney says they've decided to make Marvel and Lucasfilm movies exclusive to their own Disney streaming service when it launches in 2019.
Boo.
Yeah, I'm booing with this too. I mean, my God, how many streaming services are we all going to have to subscribe to? That's what's so funny. It's to the point now where cutting the cord and then subscribing to everything you want to watch ends up being the same price as it ever was.
How many streaming services? As many as there are channels in your cable package. Each one will have its own streaming service.
In a weird way, we're moving in two directions that are going to get us to a la carte channels. Either it's going to be a la carte companies that you pay for their content as a company, or a la carte channels on cable where you pick and choose packages that way. One of these days, we're getting there.
Yeah, but in either case, it's not actually going to be less expensive, which is that's what people actually wanted. All the people who are like, I want a la carte. No, you don't want a la carte. You want cheaper.
Yeah, you want cheaper because it feels ridiculous. I have 6 trillion channels and I watch 20.
Yeah, but you don't get to divide your $80 cable bill by 600, and that's what you pay per channel. Right. That's not how it's going to work. No, it's going to cost you $10 per channel.
Like half of it is so I can watch Alabama football games. I think. Yeah. That's ESPN.
So if you want 8 channels, it's still going to cost you $80. That's how that's going to work out.
God, they're getting their money one way or another. So, gee, I wonder why people pirate things. I don't know. Here we go. A little science news. Nanocrystals have been used to create a new ultra pure green LED. And this works into TV, as you can imagine. Combined with existing ultra pure blue and red LEDs, it can reach 97% of the Rec 2020 color gamut versus the 75% we can reach today. That's kind of fascinating to me. At present, its lifespan is short and its efficiency is low, so peak light output would be lower and wouldn't last as long. But it's an indication that full Rec 2020 could be possible using something other than lasers, which is how we're getting there nowadays, right?
That's correct. Right. Yep.
That's what's amazing to me. There's a couple things amazing about this, that this gets to be such a big story when it's just barely in existence. But, but besides that, the fact that the best OLED I've stared at and drooled over is only hitting 70-something% of that Rec 2020.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's getting close to 98% of DCI-P3,
right?
What we're seeing in the digital cinemas, but that's still DCI-P3 is itself only about, I think it's 76% or something of full Rec 2020. So but this, what was holding us back with an LED light source was the green. We couldn't get a pure enough green out at that very edge of the chromaticity diagram to get us the full Rec 2020. We could do it with lasers. They're thinking they'll be able to do it with quantum dots, although that still hasn't really happened yet. But wasn't thinking we could do it with traditional LEDs, but now here we are.
Oh, we'll get there eventually. I think it's funny, by the time I get access to, in my life, a full Rec 2020 display, I will probably be too old to see it well. It feels like that's where we're going. As my eyesight, I'm wearing my glasses today.
Or maybe the whole augmented and mixed reality thing will have taken off so much by then that we're really not looking at flat panels anymore.
Sure, it would be really neat to have a little goggles that would just fire into your retinas and actually just beam it onto your retinas.
That's coming along too. So.
That will. You think I'm kidding? It will. One of these days, our contact lenses will take pictures.
Yeah.
And you'll have like special settings to make it look like a cell phone from 2017. It'll be great. Here we go with some comments that people left for us. Jose S. says the Elite VMAX motorized screen does not have any user adjustable drop/rise memory. It's just all the way down or all the way up.
Yeah, we were wondering, this was a question from a week or two ago where somebody asked, if you have a certain amount of black drop, they call it, but black fabric above the actual screen surface on a projector screen, can you manually set how much of that comes down? Because, let's say you order 24 inches of drop, but you only need 18. Can you just set that yourself? Now, on some you can. The VMAX is Elite's entry-level motorized screen. It's like their least expensive one. So it's still possible that some of their more expensive models do allow you to do that. But the point is, it would be a good idea to contact them, because what you can always do is say, here's how much drop I need. Please build that in, and they will.
Oh, they will, yeah.
Yeah. So, but if you're not quite sure, it would be worth checking with the manufacturer. But in the case of their entry-level model, the VMAX, it doesn't. It's just whatever drop is there, it all comes out.
Do we know how much drop that is that's set? Or
I'm not sure. I think the standard is 12 inches.
12.
But I'm not exactly. But again, you can say, hey, if you need 18 inches, you can be like, I need 18 inches of drop. They're like, okay, here's 18 inches of drop.
And they'll give you a price for that.
Yeah, that's right.
There you go. Robert Z wanted to point out another scenario where EARC, Enhanced Audio Return Channel, might be useful. If someone were streaming lossless audio via DLNA or something like Plex directly to their TV, then the TV with EARC could send that lossless audio to an AV receiver. And that's kind of cool.
Yep.
And a DLNA, I love DLNA, and it just gets a bad rap. Everybody thinks it's so simple.
You're the one.
Yes, I'll tell you why. Because I'm old school computer nerd. I don't need album art or movie cover poster art. I don't need descriptions, ratings, times. I don't need any of that junk. I just need to surf through my folders that I've created and understand and see the name of the file I want to play on my television display and hit it. That's all I ever need. Or the music, because I started collecting MP3s. My first MP3 was 1996. So I actually have 21-year-old MP3s in my system. So not that the song's 21 years old, but the actual MP3 file is 21 years old.
If you want to feel old, eh?
That's right. Yeah. My first one was that. And sadly, I think it's a Spice Girls MP3, but that's what I was working with at the time, testing the system, when I made an MP3. And so I have everything OCD organized. I just don't need all that other stuff. And I installed Plex one time, and it created enormous index files, and
yes,
it was too much. And then what does Plex do if I want to organize my personal home movies that I've converted to MP4s? It doesn't have any data off that. I have to put it in.
Yeah, you have to put it in a folder structure the way you want it to show up.
Sure. So you see what I'm saying? If all I want is to play the file, DLNA is great, but it's been sort of ignored by the industry. It's the little bastard child of networking.
A lot of people didn't like just the plain list of here's your stuff.
That's what I like about it. I'm a plain text list kind of guy. I don't even need icons. You could take icons out of Windows and I would never notice. It would be great.
I remember the first MP3 I ever downloaded. It was Crash Test Dummies. I can't.
Oh, is it?
Can't remember the song. It was the one where the No. I had that on CD. It was the one where the female member was the lead singer on it. It might have been Peter Pumpkinhead.
That's XTC. I'm pretty sure of that. That's XTC.
Whatever it was, It was Crash Test Dummies, where the woman was singing instead of the usual guy.
Okay, we can look that up. Somebody knows it and is screaming
That's
at their computer or their phone
sure
right
it was
now.
Peter Pumpkinhead.
Ballad of Peter Pumpkinhead is XTC.
Yeah.
That's XTC.
No, that's Crash Test Dummies.
That's XTC.
They sang it in the Dumb and Dumber.
Maybe they sang a version. The original is XTC.
Oh, original could have been. Yeah, it could have been a version.
Okay.
Version by Crash Test Dummies.
Oh, there's a version. Okay, great. So we solved that problem, and we don't have to go to war.
We're on computers. We could look it up, but we're not going to do that.
No, I'm just staring at your face on a video chat, and so I'm just going to look at you and go, no, it was XTC.
All right, so we're going to get into some questions.
Hey, questions. That's what the show's all about.
Just before we do, I'll mention once again, question@avrant.com. That's our email address. Send your questions there to our email, question@avrant.com. You'll get on the podcast. And with that, away we go.
And here we go with people getting on the podcast. PJ is our first victim. PJ would like to upgrade his speakers fairly soon, but he wants to be sure that whatever he buys will truly be worthwhile and be perfect forever and ever. His room is 33 feet long, 12 feet wide. That's a long room. And 8 feet high. And he's sitting 16 feet from his 120-inch screen and front speakers. He's running a 5.1.2 setup that consists of a Denon AVR X2200W receiver, Polk Monitor 60 front towers, Polk CS1 center, Polk Monitor 30 surrounds, and Dayton SAT 3W speakers on the ceiling with an SVS PB1000 subwoofer. All right. Good stuff. Would SVS Prime satellite speakers be able to handle every position? He's thinking he could get a Prime satellite speaker package at an affordable price. Maybe. And here's where Rob is going to do math. Tell us some math on how you would go about figuring out what speakers could handle every position.
Right. So
he wants all his speakers to be the same thing, satellite speaker.
Yeah, I'm rather trepidatious to say that this would be a great idea. Now, look, you could put Prime satellites up in every position, left, center, right, surrounds, and your overheads. They will absolutely create sound. They will absolutely sound fine for a lot of movies and music. However, they have their output limits, and you are sitting quite far away in a room that is very long.
Right.
16 feet is, about 4.9 meters, right? Almost
Sounds
5
right, yeah.
meters. Which means you have genuinely lost just from distance, something in the range of 10 to 12 decibels versus being only 1 meter away, right? So if you were 1 meter away, the speaker's playing however loud it's playing. By the time you get back to about 5 meters away, that same speaker playing exactly the same level is now about 10 to 12 decibels quieter, just from the distance. So you've got this X2200W. It puts out 95 watts continuously. It can do peaks of 125 watts, which means that if your speaker's starting with 1 watt going into it, you've got about 21 decibels that you can get. So let's say you put in 1 watt and you're 1 meter away, all right? And the Prime satellites have an efficiency, I think they're around 84.
Right. Sounds, yeah.
So it's something right around there anyway.
It's not highly efficient.
It's not super efficient. I mean, it's not terribly inefficient, but it's not super efficient. So that's at 1 meter with 1 watt. You can add about 21 decibels to that, which gets you to, is that 105? Do I have that math right?
I'm sure you do.
84 plus 21. Yeah, that's 105. Okay,
yes,
so if you're 1 meter away, you can hit full reference volume. All right? But you aren't 1 meter away.
It's almost
you're
5
meters away, which means your maximum output that you could get to for your... Now, we're talking about your front speakers, right? Your surrounds might be a lot closer to you. They might be fine being Prime satellites. But your front speakers at 16 feet away from you, the max that they'll be able to play with this receiver and the efficiency of the Prime satellites is something in the range of about 93 to 95 decibels. Now, maybe that's fine.
I rarely go louder than that watching a movie. Every once in a while.
Absolutely be the case. But I just want to give you the figures. Those are the objective figures so that you have in mind, if I actually want the ability to hit full reference volume, you can't. Like, objectively, you just can't. The speakers aren't efficient enough. You don't have enough wattage. You don't have enough amplifier wattage on tap to get them up to that level. Now, if you wanted to do that from that distance and you're keeping the same receiver... Right,
you could upgrade receivers and get more wattage.
You could, and unfortunately with the X2200 does not have pre-outs, so this would be in a whole receiver swap. At the least, you'd need to get a receiver that has pre-outs and then add an amp to that, or get a much more powerful receiver to begin with.
But then you spent more money than that you could have put toward the speakers.
That's right. So your other option is to get more efficient speakers, something that's... I mean, ideally, if you want to hit full reference volume, something that's in the 94 to 96 decibel per watt per meter range. But, again, hitting full 105 very likely isn't necessary. I want to point you to one that I think is quite affordable, that I think looks quite good, that is not as small as the Prime satellites, but is not gigantic. And that's HSU's HB1 Mark II Horn bookshelf speaker. These are 92 dB per watt per meter. So, okay, maybe you're only hitting 103 decibels. I don't know how you're going to live, but, it's pretty good. But these are coming in right now. They're on sale for $140 each.
Yeah, that's a very good deal.
Which isn't a whole lot more expensive than the Prime satellites. I mean, this is why I like it. It's got the efficiency that you need. Again, you can check out the dimensions to see if the size will work for you. They're definitely bigger than the satellites, but they're not gigantic. They're 8x8 and then 15 inches tall. But yeah, these would be my top recommendation to you because I want you to have that headroom available, just in case you want to hit 100 decibels, which is entirely
Sometimes
possible.
you're excited and get into it, and you do want it to do that. Sci-fi movies will do that to me. If I'm ever going to pump it up, it's going to be a sci-fi movie. It has that rectangular horn tweeter assembly.
It is, yep.
And
it's a horn design.
That horn design is, the assembly as it's attached on the front is about the same size as the actual woofer mid-range driver that's below it. And so it looks kind of cool. Is it just me, or is it like horn tweeter speakers always seem to be more efficient? Is it because of the horn tweeter?
Generally they are. That's one of the advantages of having a horn.
Right.
Is that much like putting a passive megaphone in front of your mouth, it amplifies the sound that comes out.
Because I always think of lower bass notes as being what you have to drive harder and use more energy for. But as far as overall volume, that horn blasts it out louder.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're right. The bass is hard to produce. That's why we get ourselves some nice subwoofers.
That's right.
And he already got himself an SVS, so he's doing okay there. But yeah, if you wanted an example of something that could do the full reference volume, maybe Power Sound Audio's speakers, those would be a good example. But just the front three would be about $2,000. All right, in their collection. So, and that's talking their bookshelf model that they have. What is that? The MT110?
Yeah, and to me, the aesthetic of those looks more like a recording studio.
Oh yeah, and they're big.
Yeah,
though that's a 10-inch driver in those things. They're big.
Yeah, it's misleading because
it looks like it's a compact speaker if you're just looking at the picture, but this is the Power Sound Audio ones we're talking about. That's a 10-inch driver, all right? So it's way bigger. It's certainly not satellite size, so it's way bigger. It's considerably more expensive. It's pretty utilitarian, kind of ugly looking.
Charcoal gray, the whole thing, and that horn tweeter must be the size of a paperback book then.
Yeah, so I'm doubting that's what you were going for, but the HSUs I think is a very reasonable compromise of size and price and all that.
He's got a few more questions. His current projector is a BenQ W1070. Heard of that one. Would there be any advantage for him in upgrading to an Ultra HD Blu-ray player? Obviously, he wouldn't be seeing 4K resolution or HDR, but he cares about the sound more than the video. He won't be upgrading his projector anytime soon. Yeah, there's more sound in that.
Yeah, I mean, there are a handful of releases where the Ultra HD Blu-ray release has an Atmos or a DTS-X soundtrack.
Yeah, but he's running 5.1.2 right now.
Yeah, 5.1.2. So he has an Atmos and DTS-X setup. So there are some where the Ultra HD Blu-ray has an Atmos or DTS-X soundtrack and the regular 1080p Blu-ray does not. There are lots of 1080p Blu-rays that have Atmos and DTS-X, but there are... There are actually more Blu-rays that have Atmos or DTS-X 1080p Blu-rays, just because there are considerably more Blu-rays than Ultra HD Blu-rays. But there are the instances where the Ultra HD version comes with Atmos or DTS-X and the regular Blu-ray doesn't. So, I mean, if you buy the Ultra HD Blu-ray, like that's the retail disc that you buy, they all still come with a 1080p Blu-ray in there as well. So you could start building your collection even before getting an Ultra HD Blu-ray player.
Yeah, to me, if I know I'm going to have a higher resolution playback device and screen in the future, I'd hate to go buying things that aren't the best.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But
if you love a movie,
more, on average, they cost $5 more than the 1080p Blu-ray. So,
but if you love a movie, like if it's really your thing, $5. I'm okay.
What I would probably tell you to do is look at nextgenhometheater.com before you buy, and just see if the Ultra HD Blu-ray version has Atmos or DTS-X. Then look up whether the 1080p version has it. Because on the movies where the Ultra HD Blu-ray has it and the regular Blu-ray doesn't, then I'd say go ahead and buy the Ultra HD Blu-ray, because then you have it. Yeah. And then that'll probably spur you on to buying an Ultra HD Blu-ray player, one would imagine. Sure.
Yeah, I feel like I'd go ahead and go for the future collection. You know, you're going to want that.
Yeah.
On a different topic, he has an electronic drum kit, and he uses headphones with it to monitor his own playback. It just has a standard 1/4-inch output jack, and he's been using a pair of Audio-Technica ATH M40X headphones that sound great. Sometimes his daughters want to listen to him play too, but he'd like for everyone to be able to use headphones. He picked up a very cheap splitter from Walgreens, but it sounds awful. Sound doesn't even come out of both ears all the time. Yeah, that's really bad. That's
That
called
sounds
defective.
like
That's broken.
However cheap it was, that sounds like a waste of money, unfortunately.
Right. So what's a good solution for sending the 1/4 inch output of the drum kit to multiple ATH M40X headphones? Well, there are such things as headphone splitter amplifiers. Coming
There
from
sure
a
are.
radio background, I can tell you that's very common.
Mhm.
And here's one from Samson. The
Samson, yes, not Samsung.
Right,
Samson, Samson.
Right.
Tom has used this himself. He's used it in person. Really liked it. Mark Henninger over at AVS Forum wrote up a review about it. Really liked it.
Right.
And what is it, $69 retail? I think you can find it for $60.
I don't see the prices. I'm looking at this.
So it's not breaking the
69.
bank, but what this is 4 headphone outputs. So it has 4 headphone outputs with individual volume for each of them. Now,
Right.
one slight little oddity is that its 1/4 inch inputs are actually separated. There's a separate
yeah.
left and right.
So you'll need a cable from Monoprice to split your stereo to 2 monos.
Or you can just convert the 1/4 inch jack to a 3.5 millimeter jack because it also has one of those.
Okay, that's even
So
easier.
I'll bet something in your repertoire came with a 3.5 millimeter adapter.
yeah.
Most of us have one of those lying around. But anyway, this will allow you to take the output of your drum kit and feed 4 pairs of headphones.
Right,
which,
and the nice thing here, if he has kids listening, he can set the master volume so no one can go louder than a certain volume,
That's right.
and then everybody selects their volume within that master volume.
Yeah. So really good sound quality. The price is, I don't think, offensive. I would hope not.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, I think worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. Mike L. asking questions. Mike is looking for a new subwoofer. His setup is in a spare bedroom that's 14 feet long, 10 feet wide, 8 feet high. His maximum budget is $550, although he's okay if there's shipping on top of that. And he'd like this new subwoofer to play below 20 hertz. How much below, and what do you mean by play? There's a chance he'll be moving this setup to a larger space at some point, so it would be nice if the sub could cope with that. And this is a dedicated theater, so the physical size of the subwoofer isn't much of a concern for him. He's been considering the HSU VTF2 MK5 or the Rhythmic LV12R. Is one of those clearly a better choice than the other? Is there some other brand and model he should be considering instead of either of those? Hey, guess what brand name Rob's going to mention?
Well, strictly because it's actually the least expensive once you factor in shipping.
Right.
SVS does have their PB1000, which for this room size would absolutely be 100% fine.
Rock'em sock'em at $500 exactly.
Yeah, that one's $500 with the shipping included.
Yeah,
so
you're under budget.
It ends up being the least expensive out of those 3, and it would totally work in this room size. And in a larger room in the future, the nice thing about SVS is that even if you go to a room that's so large, you're exceeding the output capabilities of the sub, their subs, because of their excellent DSP protection, they play as loud as they possibly can and then just politely refuse to play any louder. They don't bottom out, they don't distort badly, so that's a really nice safety feature. So that would be a perfectly fine choice, but you can't go wrong with any of these 3. I really got to be honest. You cannot go wrong.
No, none of these are terrible choices.
Heavens no. They're all good choices. They're all outright good choices. Now, I do want to applaud HSU with their Mark V version of the VTF2. They've stepped that model up a little bit. They gave it a little bit more amplifier power. They gave it some larger ports. They gave it even more port tuning than it had before, which it already, VTF stands for variable tuning. So, they stepped up that model. I'm quite impressed by the specifications of that VTF2 Mark V. That's a very nice subwoofer that's within the price range you're looking for. So I almost kind of lean that way because I really like the looks of what they've done with that. But you 100% can't go wrong. You get a PB1000, an HSU VTF2 Mark V, or a Rhythmic LV12R. You're going to be happy with any of those.
Right.
They will all do the job very nicely in this room.
Can we address this magic number of 20 hertz? Because for me, I think a lot of people get hung up on that number as being something that if you achieve lower, you've reached some nirvana level of bass, or that there is some magical sounds down there you're missing that's going to do something special to you. And to get something that actually plays below 20 and really makes any difference in your experience, is that something you can really honestly do, that something will really sound different?
Oh, I mean, it can be done. It's just, it's exceedingly rare to have any content below 20 hertz. You literally cannot hear it. It is subsonic. Your ears do not experience it. But we are talking about pressure. It is literal air pressurization. So there is such a thing as playing some infrasonic note, 10 hertz or something like that, and physically feeling the air move. I mean, it's just a fact that can happen. So, I mean, there are things on YouTube, people doing it. There's one particular scene, a helicopter attack, and there's this one gigantic thudding, I think it's 12 hertz thing that goes off. And so they put 15, 18-inch drivers into a tiny little home theater and, practically deafened themselves because you can't hear it, but the pressure alone was enough to, scare the, bejesus out of you there. So, that exists, but as far as what you can hear, you can't hear anything lower than 20 hertz. But yeah, I mean, all of these reach down linearly to 20 hertz.
Yeah.
So that's what you need. They're all producing some bass below that if you really, really want it for whatever reason.
So again, what's he say? He'd like it to play below 20. He didn't say it needs to be linear below 20 or so. I mean, there's a big difference between.
I think he wants to see it on a graph. I think that's what he wants.
I gotcha. And so, your 19 hertz can be achieved, I think, with any of these to some extent, right?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So the HSU VTF2 Mark V appears to offer more in the way of tuning options, like its port plugs and ability to be run as a sealed subwoofer. Are those good benefits to have?
If it's something you want to play with.
Yeah. It isn't harmful.
Oh, definitely not. I will say for some people it can be harmful.
Yeah, if you go messing around with it and you actually ruin your sound, or at least,
Well, I mean, you can just get in the situation where you have so many options available to you, you never settle on anything. If that's your personality,
and that's mine.
Potentially be somewhat harmful to you. You just can't stop tweaking it. But yeah, in general,
that's what she said.
Okay. In general, it's not a bad idea to have, particularly if you don't have a ton of ways to adjust the bass response in other parts of your system. If you have a fairly basic receiver with fairly basic room correction, if you don't have anything external like a mini DSP or something like that, then having the tuning available on the subwoofer itself can help you achieve more linear extension.
Sure.
So in that sense, like I said, it seems like he's kind of leaning towards the HSU. That's the way his email read. And I'm like, if that's the one you're leaning towards, I say go for it, because I'm very impressed by that one too.
Yeah, good stuff. His current front left-right speakers are ELAC Debut B6s. He'd like to add a center, but he's got his eye on the ELAC Unify UC5 with its concentric tweeter and mid-range driver. He knows they are different series, but they're both ELAC and both designed by Andrew Jones, so will they offer a close timbre match? Or timbre match?
So, I mean, according to Andrew Jones, yes. According to most of the people who have heard, because I haven't heard the Unify series, I don't know what they sound like.
Right.
I don't doubt that they sound a lot like an Andrew Jones speaker. That would make a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't foresee you having a huge problem there.
Right.
That wouldn't be my expectation. This isn't going to something wildly different where I would say, oh, I expect you to have a timbre mismatch problem. I'll bet if you put them side by side and A/B compared them that they don't sound identical, but then your center speaker never sounds identical to your front left rights anyway, simply because of its positioning.
Right. It's so rare to have content in something that shows off exact timbre match.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's so rare. So probably you're fine if you like it, man. Good speaker.
If this is what you want to do, if this is what you have in mind, I'm not going to stop you on that one. I think you should be fine doing that.
There you go. Go for it. Now we're moving on to Don G. Don's new media room is under construction, and it will be 18 feet 2 inches long by 15 feet 6 inches wide with 10-foot ceilings. He'll be using his Marantz SR7010 AV receiver, along with his PSB Stratus Gold towers and center up front, and his dual SVS SB2000 subwoofers. All righty. Gonna rock the house.
Yeah, so if you're watching the YouTube video, youtube.com/c/AVRant, by the way, if you want to see our videos, this was a previous picture. Don't worry, that isn't where the chairs are going to go. That's just where they happen to be arrayed at the moment. So we talked about Don's setup in the past and suggested he wants the 2 recliners, the 2 chairs to be his primary seats. We're like, put those closer to the TV, get them in front of the middle of your room, so don't put them at 9 feet back from the front wall, which is basically the middle of his room. Put him in front of that, because he's right now got a flat panel, and then put the sofa behind that as a second row. That's what we suggested last time, just to remind people what was going on there.
Right, so just slide those little squares around in your mind, and he's got 2 rows now of seating.
That's right.
He has a pair of PSB bipole surround speakers. They have the typical bipole trapezoid shape with the 2 angled sides and the ability to be flush mounted on the wall. In his previous setup, he had them mounted very close to the ceiling, so he angled them down. He also didn't have room for surround back speakers in his old setup, but now he will with the new setup. So, should he continue using his bipole surround speakers, or should he sell them in favor of having direct firing speakers? He'll be getting 1 pair of direct firing speakers to use as surround backs. Should he make it 2 pair? Or perhaps put the direct firing speakers on the sides and use the bipoles as the surround backs? Lots of interesting questions. Those are good questions.
They are.
Yeah. So what is your best bet when you go from the diffuse sort of 2 regular surround speakers, and now you're going to have 4 speakers in the general area, some behind you, some next to you. What's better at that point?
So the good news is you can think of bipoles, because there's I'll just quickly explain the difference. There's dipoles, which means you've got these 2 sets of drivers, right? So you got a tweeter and a woofer that are angled to fire sort of towards the front of the room, and then a second tweeter and a second woofer that are angled to sort of fire towards the back of the room. Now, in a dipole speaker, those sets of drivers are out of phase with one another. So when the front ones go out, the back ones go in, and then vice versa. So they're out of phase with each other, and that creates a null right in the middle. So in between those 2 sets of drivers, you get a null where there's no sound at all. The sound all cancels out right there.
Why is that useful? I never have understood that.
Yeah, that was when they were trying to mimic the array of surround speakers in a full-size commercial movie theater, which when you're in a full-size theater and sitting in the middle of the theater, it's very difficult to pinpoint the side surround because you have this whole array of speakers over there.
Okay.
So it's over there to my right, but it's not a pinpoint location.
Yeah,
So if you had 1 speaker, you'd be able to pinpoint it. But the array makes it very diffuse. So the dipole speaker also creates a very, very diffuse sound. You can say, I know the sound's coming from my right, but I don't know exactly where on my right.
Yeah, it's like having a weird, schmooey, giant speaker.
Yeah.
There.
Well, I mean, it's like taking your front, left, and right speakers and wiring them out of phase. You no longer get that nice center image. The sound just kind of comes from there-ish.
There-ish. An area, a feeling.
Yeah, so that was the dipole speaker, and we don't really favor using those now that we're getting into Atmos and all this stuff, where you want to be able to direct the sound with fairly good pinpoint accuracy, these objects that we can move around. So yeah, that's kind of why we aren't favoring dipoles, but bipoles take both of those sets of drivers and fire them in phase. So really, you just have 2 monopole speakers that are firing in kind of separate directions. And if the angles are correct, and PSB knows how to do this, if the angles are correct, you just end up with a very wide dispersion speaker. That's really all it is.
Yeah.
So instead of calling it diffuse, I would just call it very wide dispersion. Which, when you got 2 rows of seats, is a useful thing.
Hey, now, there you go, yeah.
That's a useful thing. So I would keep the bipoles. I would put them on your side walls. I would mount them so that you have a height-wise, so that you have a clear line of sight to each of your listeners. So that'll be maybe 2 feet above your heads when you're sitting down. And then I would put these bipoles, I would put them a little bit behind your primary row.
A little behind the front row, little in front of the back row.
That's right.
So
not
they
necessarily
each kind of
right in the middle, not necessarily perfectly split, but maybe a foot or 2 behind your primary seats. And now you got this nice wide dispersion on your sides, but you still get pretty good pinpoint accuracy of where that sound is coming from. So you're kind of getting a nice compromise, a nice almost best of all worlds type of solution.
That's not bad.
don't put diffuse speakers of any kind, or even, super wide display. Don't put them on your back wall. You're supposed to have traditional forward firing speakers on your back wall as you surround backs. But yeah, no reason to replace these. Put them on your side walls. Clear line of sight a little bit behind you.
There you go. There's your ideal setup, and that actually makes good sense. If he's using the bipoles as his surrounds, where exactly should they be placed? I think we just kind of covered that.
I think we covered that one. There you go. Yep.
Yeah, directly to either side of his primary seats, but a little behind.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he did ask, should he just flush mount them? And yes, just flush mount them. They come with their flush mounts.
Yeah.
If you're not mounting them too high, and he already said he doesn't want to do that again. So like I say, just clear line of sight to each of your listeners. That's what you're going for.
Right.
Probably about 2 feet above your head.
There you go. Moving on to another question from, I've already forgotten who we're talking to. Don G. Sorry, Don G.
No worries.
He'll be using his 65-inch Panasonic Plasma for the time being. I understand that. I'm still using a Panasonic Plasma. We talked through his seating options last time that he wrote to us. I keep saying us, but not me. I wasn't here.
The royal we.
The royal we, too. Well, I'm part of the show, so royal us.
That's right.
And we wound up suggesting that he sit 7 to 8 feet away, so that his seat would be in front of the center line of his room. We just talked about that. And to give him a pretty nice field of view for that screen size. In a year or two, though, he's thinking he'll upgrade his display. And he isn't sure whether going projection or sticking with a flat panel is the right choice. The room is dedicated, so he could make it totally dark. But he's sort of leaning flat panel because it would be easier and would probably fit his viewing habits a bit better. There are some pretty large flat panels now, that's true. 85 inches is not uncommon. But if he goes to a larger screen size like that, or to a projection setup, what would be his new seating distance? He asks because the last time he wrote in, he was concerned about where to install his ceiling speakers for Atmos, and we said it all depended on where he puts his seats. My first thought is, if you get a bigger screen and you're just moving seats back, as long as you don't have a permanently installed platform for that back row, it shouldn't be too hard to move the seats. Moving surround speakers shouldn't be too hard if you want to kick them back a little bit. Your rear surrounds don't go anywhere.
But in ceiling Atmos speakers,
yeah,
that's a little bit of a thing. So yeah, I mean, this is a great question. I completely understand where you're coming from, because you don't want to go installing in ceilings and then going, but now I got the larger screen, so now I have to move them back. I think, since he wants to lean flat panel anyway, and look, flat panels still have very real advantages over projectors, particularly for HDR. There's just no question that when it comes to HDR viewing, flat panels just kick the pants off of projectors still. Right. Maybe that'll change one day, but at the moment, that's still very much the case. And you're absolutely right. We're getting these 75-inch flat panels, really quite affordable even, good ones.
Yeah, it's getting kind of crazy.
It is, yeah. I mean, we're not talking about massive prices anymore. I mean, the 85-inch ones still tend to be pretty darn expensive. Yeah. But yeah, you can get certainly like a 75-inch. So let's say you're sitting at like the 7.5 foot distance that we sort of suggested there the last time, right? Let's say you keep that. You're sitting, 7.5 to 8 feet away from your current screen. That at the moment was giving slightly less than a 30-degree field of view, but we didn't want to get you so close to your current 65-inch screen that was going to start creating problems of its own, right?
Right. Yeah.
So you could bump up to, to a larger screen size, but keep the same seating distance.
Yeah.
And that's just going to look, really nice and cinematic.
Yeah.
So,
I would say just put your seats now where you're just a little too far away from the 65, and then you give yourself the freedom of choosing whatever bigger flat panel screen you want in the future without having to move anything.
Yeah.
Just be a little too far away now. Just a little. Just a little. Be on the far side of that range that people, they say, what's the angle range of your field of vision that's recommended for
well, I generally say try not to go past about 45 45 degrees. But if
what's the low end of that's recommended?
The low end,
45 is ideal, or
like 32 right? Usually you're aiming for like a 32.
I'd say shoot for the 32 degree field of view now.
Well, for 65 inches you'd still have to be even closer though, so that
all right.
I wouldn't do. I'm going to say stick with the 7 to 8 foot seating distance
All right.
that we told you in the first one. So, okay, so I'm just going to try and work out a little bit here on the fly. I had a calculator problem, so that
You want me to hum the Jeopardy theme? I could hum the Jeopardy theme.
No, we should be okay here. So what are we going to end up with here?
Math.
Getting there.
Trigonometry.
Yup, it is. It's some
Rob
things.
is doing math with angles.
Okay, there. Bring that up, and there, and voila. Well, what do you know? Okay, 75-inch screen. If you're 7.5 feet away, so eyes to screen 7.5 feet, 75-inch screen gives you a 40-degree field of view.
Oh, that's nothing wrong
It's
with
really
that.
nice. And
Nothing
the 85-inch screen gets you slightly more than a 45-degree field of view. So you're all the way up there. So I'm thinking 75-inch screen, same seating distance.
Yeah.
Superb HDR, pretty darn affordable, and you don't have to move your Atmos speakers.
That does sound like that sounds like the option right there.
Yeah, sounds like a winning combo to me.
It does.
So that's the advice I would offer.
Right, and the beautiful thing there is you don't have to take into account projector issues now or in the future.
Yeah.
All you're doing is hanging a bigger screen in the same spot, and you get a bigger impact experience.
And it still doesn't preclude you from getting a projector screen if you want to and simply sitting in your back row instead of your front row.
That's true, you could. And suddenly the primary seating is one row back. You could do it.
Didn't have to move anything. You could, like, let's say you go ahead, you get a 75-inch flat panel in a year or two. You're still sitting in your front row. And then you're like, you know what? I want a really big cinema experience. So you go and get like a 135-inch projection screen, but it comes down in front of that 75-inch flat panel. And now you just go and sit in your back row?
Yeah.
Hey, man. Nothing had to move. Seats didn't move. Speakers didn't move. But you got screen choices.
And you can just put your feet up on your other guests' shoulders, just kick your feet up on the back of those chairs.
There you go, man. Okay. I'm very happy with that plan.
We feel good about this. We're coming to your house every 2 years when you buy a new television. Since he wants a 7.2.4 setup and he's using a Marantz SR7010, he needs at least 2 channels of external amplification. But prior to owning the Marantz, he was using a B&K 507 7-channel AV receiver. His PSB Gold speakers are a nominal 4 ohm load, and he's been told they actually dip below 4 ohms quite a bit and are quite power hungry. He isn't sure if it's really all just down to the amplifiers, but he thinks the speakers used to sound better being powered by the B&K than they do being powered by the Marantz. I understand that kind of psychological effect, and thinking about that and worrying that. My last amplifier, I swear, did better with the speakers in my living room than the new one does now. But it might be for other reasons. But I know how that feels.
And it might not be purely psychological.
Right.
There is a legitimate amplifier difference. B&K was using ATI designed amps in everything they were doing, and they were more powerful amplifiers. That's just objectively true. So it's not impossible in a case like this with low impedance, fairly low efficiency speakers. That could be a genuine difference. So I don't think you're nuts at all.
Right. No, I don't either. I think I have 6 ohm speakers as their nominal rating. That probably dip below that, so I might have heard some difference. Could he use his B&K 507 just as an amplifier? Sure. It does have multi-channel analog audio inputs, and the instructions in the manual say it can be set as a direct pass-through. Would that work and give him back the sound quality he was used to before, or should he just buy a separate Emotiva or ATI amplifier? My guess would be he could use it.
You can absolutely use it. Yeah. So he sent in a photo of the back, and just looking at that, it does have 5.1 analog inputs. Even though it has 7 amplifiers, it doesn't have a 7.1 analog input. It's a 5.1, and actually confirmed that by looking up the spec sheet a little bit ways down. It says analog audio input 5.1.
Yeah.
So it's not 7.1. However, you can put in 5 of your channels to this B&K, put it into that analog input mode that bypasses all processing and everything.
There you go.
You're going to want to select one volume knob level on the B&K and leave it there at all times. Never adjust the volume knob on the B&K after that, because at this point you just want your B&K receiver to work as a dumb amplifier. You don't want it futzing with the signal, and you don't want its volume changing, but you pick a volume level, usually 0 dB on the volume dial, but you could back that down if there's some noise floor or something going on, which there probably shouldn't be, ATI amps. But yeah, normally you leave it at 0 dB, then you are just using it as a dumb amplifier. You use your Marantz as pre-outs, you feed up to 5 channels into the B&K, and Bob's your uncle. Yeah. That'll work. No need to buy anything new.
Then you don't have to get rid of that wonderful looking receiver. Look at all those beautiful S-video inputs. Those were the days.
Yes. Yeah, there are a lot on there too, aren't there?
I love
it,
man.
No HDMI though, no HDMI.
No HDMI, but I have a Panasonic receiver in my closet back over my shoulder here that I keep thinking I'm going to take somewhere and get fixed because I love it. And it died at some point in the past. It keeps blowing fuses, and it has S-video inputs, and it's just lovely good old days. And that should answer that question. And so we are done there. Let's move on to Jonathan F. Jonathan works in the legal profession and loves sending us long articles. He passed along a write-up in the Washington Post about a Utah law that bans any establishment that is licensed to sell alcohol from showing any sexual acts or simulated sexual acts. Really, even simulated. The law was apparently meant to deter adult-only theaters and strip clubs, but it wound up being argued as a First Amendment issue because an officer reported a Cineplex that happens to offer alcohol for some screenings for showing the movie Deadpool. Yeah, there's simulated. Yeah. Idaho had a similar law that has since been narrowed so that regular Cineplexes showing wide-release movies aren't barred from showing any movie with a sex scene or nudity. And it appears as though Utah will narrow its law in a similar way. But Jonathan wonders, if you can't watch Deadpool while drinking a beer, what's the point of ever leaving your house? Amen, Jonathan. Come on. I said I wasn't going to talk politics, but you can tell by my tone of voice how I feel about this.
Well, and dude, being in Canada what it takes to get an R rating in Canada, because R ratings are a little different, right? We have so we have PG, which is about the same, but then we have a 14A.
14A, okay.
14A, right? So instead of PG-13, we have a 14A, but 14A just means if you are under the age of 14, you have to be accompanied by someone who is over 18. Okay. That's all that means. So it doesn't mean you can't bring a 12-year-old to a 14A rated movie.
You just have to come with your older brother or all those seniors that you hang out with.
And then we also have 18A, which is a similar idea. No one under 18 can go by themselves, but if they're accompanied by an adult, they can see an 18A. So everything that gets rated R in the States is most of them are rated 14A in Canada, and then some of them end up being 18A. But we have an R rating, which is full-on restriction, which is no one under 18 can go into this movie. That's our R rating. To get an R rating in Canada, I don't even know what you have to do. I haven't seen an R rating in Canada in forever.
Well,
but I mean,
isn't that like our NC-17?
Basically, yeah.
Which never happens. I've never
Language, we don't. That's 14A. That covers all language, whatever language you want to say, unless it's something absolutely atrocious. And then it might be 18A. You can still see it if you're under 18. You just have to come with an adult. I was surprised because Logan got rated 18A in Canada, but it was specifically because it depicted violence against children, gory violence against children.
Right,
that's what got it an 18A. It wasn't the language. It wasn't anything like that.
Isn't that interesting? Because in America, I don't think you can get too violent. For an R rating. I don't think you can. I honestly don't think you can. But you can get too naughty, according to the censors. But
I mean, like nudity stuff, so what was it? Ex Machina, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, what a great movie. Loved it.
Has some full frontal nudity in it. It was PG in Canada. All right. Now, that had a ton of F-bombs and full frontal nudity, but we said a robot examines its body in the mirror. We made the distinction in Canada that this was a robot examining its body, not a human.
Yeah, but that was a good-looking robot, Rob.
Even though it was played by a human, we can actually make that distinction. Whereas, I guess, I don't know, I mean, I guess if you were drinking a beer while watching Ex Machina in a Utah theater.
Sounds like something you'd want to do. I love that somehow where I live in Alabama is more open than another state about issues like this.
I don't get the weirdness about nudity and sex that is pervasive in quite a few areas in the States. I guess it's the Puritan heritage or something going on.
That's America for you.
Some of it must be religious based, I would imagine, or something like that. We don't care a lot about nudity in Canada.
It's so weird here. I don't understand that. But sometimes the law gets funny. Here in Alabama, they forgot to make prostitution illegal outside of city limits until recently.
Okay.
Until recently, like some decade ago or so, somebody said, "Wait a minute, is that legal? What?"
But I mean, the going a little bit more in depth on what the article was saying, they were saying like this was, what was it? It's something about, doing harm to the community, right?
Yeah.
Which again, like a strip club does harm to the community. Apparently it does. It just, they consider that to be just harmful. Anything that they would call pornography, they just say is harmful to the community.
Yeah.
So okay, I don't know. I don't personally consider that stuff harmful to the community.
No, not at all. I consider it helpful to the community. I'm not kidding you. I think that there's a certain argument to be made about an outlet for people's thoughts and desires, and it serves a purpose.
But a wide release movie, I mean, look, they give the movies a rating, right? Deadpool was rated R in the States. It was.
Sure.
So it's you're not supposed to bring your 5-year-old to Deadpool. People did. I know people did. But, you're not supposed, they gave the rating, so it's like, you've got the MPAA rating. They've got descriptions of what's going on. If you're, let adults be adults.
Yes.
Right? Make
please.
decisions for yourself. I don't know. There you go. That's all I want to say about that.
I know. Some people love to decide things for you. Moving on to Josh B. Josh wants to set up a 7.2.4 Atmos configuration using a Pioneer Elite LX801 AV receiver. It has 9 amps built in, but Josh already owns a 7-channel Outlaw audio amp, so he figures he has all the amplification he needs.
You do,
that
Josh.
too. Yeah.
You do.
The Pioneer manual is a bit confusing, though. Josh wants to power his 7, quote, ear-level speakers using his Outlaw amp, and then have the Pioneer power the 4 ceiling speakers. Is that achievable? And if so, what are the settings that he needs to make in Pioneer's menus? That sounds achievable. Rob, did you research that Pioneer Elite LX801 and can tell him exactly the settings?
I sure did, and actually that was very coincidental because we've had that ongoing conversation with Mark from Accessories for Less, who's now selling Pioneer Elite receivers at Accessories for Less and wants Tom to try one. So yeah, I was already looking at models like the 701, 801, and 901. Those are the ones that can all process 11 speakers.
Okay.
So the short answer is yes, it's 100% achievable.
All right.
The actual only setting you need to make is in the amplifier assign. Now, again, I agree. This is confusing because you're like, amplifier assign, is that where I get to assign where the amplifiers go?
No, it can't possibly be that. No.
It isn't. That's where you get to choose what your configuration is. So they could call it configuration assign or speaker setup or something like that, but they call it amplifier assign. And in there, you simply need to say, I have 7.2.4, not 5.2.4, not 5.1, not 7.1. I have 7.2.4, and that's it. You're done. You are already now configured to do what you wanted to do, which is power the 7 speakers that are the traditional 7 speakers around you, and then the Pioneer can itself power the 4 on the ceiling. You're already done. So yeah, that's the long and short of it. Now, to get a little bit more into the detail for other people who might be looking at this, the Pioneers are not super duper flexible. All right, they have these ones like the 801 has 9 amplifiers built in. So that means if you're running 11 speakers, like a 7.2.4 configuration, 2 of those speakers must be powered externally, right? You only have 9 internal amps.
Sure.
So 2 must be powered externally. And you have, in the case of the Pioneer 701 and 801, no choice about which 2 must be powered externally. The surround back speakers must be powered externally.
Okay.
And that's the end of the story. So if you were like, I have an external 2-channel amp, and I would like to use that external 2-channel amp to power my front, left, and right speakers, and then let the 9 internal amps of the Pioneer power all the remaining speakers, you can't do that.
You'd still need 2 more channels for the surround back. Is that what you're saying?
You'd still need 2 more for the surround back. Now, you can very much power the front, left, and right speakers with an external amp. It has all the pre-outs for it.
Okay.
But the surround backs will still be silent unless you plug a external 2-channel amp into those.
So end of story, your surround backs have to be another amp.
Your surround backs, when you're running 11 speakers.
When you do 11 speakers,
your surround backs have to be powered externally. All the other ones can be, if you want them to be. The pre-outs are always active. but the surround backs have to be powered externally. Now, there's one last thing, which is that Pioneer gives you a miscellaneous menu. Right? You go into its settings, and there is a miscellaneous, and under there is a preamp mode. That's one of the options.
Okay.
Now, preamp mode, if you turn it all the way on, shuts off all the internal amplifiers and says, now you must power everything externally. Which some people want to do, right?
Yeah.
It also gives you the option to turn off the power going to just the front left and right speakers, or the front 3 speakers, left, center, and right.
Okay.
I don't know what that achieves. Power is drawn by the speakers, isn't pushed into the speaker binding posts.
Yeah.
So I don't know what difference that possibly makes, but there it is, I guess.
You can turn them off.
Because some users wanted to. But yeah, honestly, just say, I got 7.2.4, plug in your Outlaw amp to your 7 ear level speakers, plug your overhead speakers directly into the Pioneer's height 1 and height 2 binding posts, and you're done.
And you're done. So, yay, that was a nice, easy answer and good learning happening right there. Moving on to Josh Pollard from the Digital Media Zone.
Yeah.
Josh's old Pioneer receiver is giving up the ghost. It's having weird issues where it's repeating remote commands all on its own. So, for example, if you turn up the volume a few clicks a minute or so later, it'll decide to keep turning the volume up as though you're still hitting the button on the remote. That's problematic.
It is. He had that problem.
Oh, wow.
It was a noticeable problem.
Oh, whoa. Since it's old enough that it doesn't even offer any HDMI inputs, he figures it's time for an upgrade. Yeah. However, this is for a living room that is never going to use more than a 5.1 setup. I know that feeling. No dual subs. I might get dual subs one day, though. No dual subs, no Atmos, nothing fancy. He does have a 2016 Vizio M series, though, so being able to pass through 4K and HDR is important.
Yes.
Yes, very. He figures he should be able to go to Accessories for Less and get a receiver that fits his needs for under $300. Any reason he couldn't just get the cheapest 5.1 receiver they offer? Any specific model he should look for? I would think you could easily find that, and I'd probably say Yamaha, and I look down here at Rob's recommendations he's written in the show notes, and guess what? Yamaha for days. Yes.
Yep. So there's the one reason why you shouldn't just simply go for the cheapest 5.1 receiver that they have, and that is Dolby Vision.
Yeah.
Because the Vizio M series does support Dolby Vision, but not all AV receivers support passing through a Dolby Vision signal, which would be a nice thing to be able to do. I mean, as long as it's still meeting all his other needs and not costing more than $300, why not have that feature as well, right?
Yeah.
So thanks to Scott Wilkinson over at AVS Forum, he put up his excellent article about which receivers already have or have announced that they will be getting Dolby Vision pass-through support via a future firmware update. There are several models. So there's some Onkyos, some Denons, some Yamahas. Now, the other reason I'm saying to maybe look at a Yamaha is because I think, this is my personal opinion, that when you get to these very inexpensive entry-level receivers, you still want an auto setup program.
Yeah.
And if you're going to have one, I'd like it to be at least moderately half decent.
Yes.
And at the lowest prices, I think Yamaha's YPOW automated setup, while not the greatest thing ever, I'm like, it's competent.
Yes.
It does the job. It does it pretty decently. It's not something I would tell you to turn off, like Onkyo's Accu EQ, which I would tell you to just not use.
Yeah,
or
my little YPOW setup is great. I have, not the lowest end Yamaha, but it's just a one position, and I tweaked it manually a little bit to get the results I wanted, and it sounds fantastic.
But it gets you your distances, your levels. The EQ it does is not harmful to the sound. So I favor Yamaha in here. Now, their RX V383 is at Accessories for Less. It doesn't pass Dolby Vision right this second, but it's been announced that it'll get the firmware update to do that.
I'm impressed at that price. It's $210.
$210, right?
Yeah.
So the cheapest one I think was $170. It was like an Onkyo that was $170. But I'm like, that one didn't pass Dolby Vision. I don't think it even had Accu EQ. I think it had no auto setup whatsoever. So I'm like, $40 gets you some niceties, especially that Dolby Vision pass through. So I'm like, I think we checked all the boxes. We're certainly under $300. So that's the one. Now, They do also have their RXV 483, and what that adds versus the 383 is it gives you Wi-Fi built in and Yamaha's Music Cast system, which is their whole house wireless audio system.
Right.
So the 383 doesn't have that. The 383 doesn't have Wi-Fi built in. It doesn't have Music Cast. If those features are interesting, then what is it? It's slightly more than 300?
320.
320. Okay, so if you want those features, we're not going drastically over the budget, but yeah, I would look at those. Yamaha, the 383 or the 483, those check the boxes.
Man, it sounds to me like that 383 is right up his alley.
Yeah, I mean, that's more or less what, unless he really wants Wi-Fi, then the 483.
I've just been a Yamaha fan for ages, so yeah, I'm happy to see that as a recommendation. Yeah. All right, there you go, Josh. Moving on to Infinite Gary. Does Infinite Gary ask a question every show or just when I'm on?
Pretty darn close. Pretty darn close
right
to every
on.
show.
Excellent. Infinite Gary has questions. Sharp announced an 8K resolution flat panel at IFA last week. No talk of bringing it to North America, as it seems to primarily be aimed at Japan and Korea, where they expect to actually start broadcasting 8K television in time for the 2020 Olympics for people that want 300-inch screens, I guess. What are you going to do with 8K in your house? Whose house is that big? Do you live in an IMAX? What? Is there really a legitimate reason for 8K, though, he asks? And as you can see by what I just said, I wouldn't think so. Even if content is shot with an 8K camera and remains 8K all the way through the production and distribution chain, what would we really see above and beyond what 4K or even just HD already offers? Again, unless you have a ginormous screen, and Rob can do the trigonometry real fast, what in the world, man? 4K in almost everyone's house I've ever been to is already overkill. And I love it.
I mean, especially for most of our existing content, because most of the movie, even modern movies that are all digital, shot digitally, processed digitally, distributed digitally, most of them are still 2K intermediates. They're not even 4K intermediates, which means, all the special effects, compositing of shots and all that is done at 2K resolution.
For real? Okay.
Yeah, that's still most of them. So,
wow.
Getting all the way up to 8K, I mean, getting the actual, he said with the caveat, the entire production and distribution chain remains 8K all the way through. I mean, first of all, that's going to be a while.
No kidding.
we got to get to 4K being a regular thing before we get to 8K.
I mean, seriously, that's so much data. That's much data.
It was hilarious because somebody asked, they said, hey, this 8K flat panel, how are you getting the 8K signal in there? Like, do you have HDMI 2.1 ports with the 48 gigabits of bandwidth? And they said, actually, we're just using 4 HDMI 2 cables. That's how they're doing it. HDMI 2.0, but 4 of them. You need 4 cables. Right.
But seriously,
from your cable box to your television. 4 HDMI cables.
Just from a geometry standpoint, how far away from a 4K TV do you have, or how close rather to a 4K TV do you have to be to resolve a pixel if you have 20/20 vision? Don't you have to be a foot and a half away or something?
Well, yeah.
Or
so
2 feet away. How far away?
Once you get to the point,
like say you have a 65-inch, like that 65-inch OLED that I want, it's a 4K TV.
Sure.
And so how close does my nose have to be to that screen for me to see a pixel with normal human 20/20 vision?
Right. So you have to get to where each pixel is filling 1 arc minute.
Okay.
Which is 1/60th of a degree.
Yeah.
Once you get there, that means you will see white pixel next to black pixel next to white pixel instead of it merging into gray.
Right. You'll see the actual structure on the screen.
Yeah. Now that still doesn't necessarily mean you'll see a screen door effect, because to see screen door effect means that the gaps between the pixels are starting to exceed 1/2 of 1 arc minute, so like 120th of a degree.
Right,
it means the gap is in order for you to see the grid structure, right? Okay, I don't really want to work out the math right now, but yes, you have to get insanely close before you're seeing individual pixels or have an enormous screen. Now, in Japan, they are talking about using this 8K to like project the image of the Olympics on the side of a building.
Yeah, that'd be great. Right? But then again, you're still going to have to be close to it. It's just an angle thing.
But the idea is that even on the side of a building, you're not going to see individual pixels until you get pretty close to it. That's kind of the idea.
Unless you build a really, really smooth building. Really smooth. You better get that stucco just right.
I mean, as we've been talking about contrast black levels,
Yes.
HDR, wider
Yes, there
color.
you go.
We notice all of these things before we notice resolution. I mean, the
right.
8K initiative that they started, NHK in Japan started that. They started that. What was it? That was back in like 1999. They started that initiative.
Wow.
With the goal of getting it working by 2020. Like it's been a long time. So they've never moved off of that. They're still touting 22.2 channel based audio. They will not let it go.
I would be so thrilled if I could just get 1080p from Comcast.
Yeah, there you go.
If I could just get something higher than 1280 by 720, they converted all the damn channels to 1280 by 720, even if it's supposed to. Like HBO, they downgraded to 720p.
No, I mean, I would rather have 1080p with HDR.
Yeah.
I will take that all day over having just 8K resolution with
Yeah,
standard dynamic range and standard color. Yeah, give me the wider color, give me the HDR, the resolution. Like HD is basically enough.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's out of hand. I would just like to get less compression in my house and not see all the little mosquito noise and such things. And Infinite Gary has one more question. What difference does a laser light engine in a projector make over a lamp? Is it possible for them to look the same? It's possible, but like we said before, it's color gamut, right? And brightness.
Yeah, mostly right now it's that color gamut. You can have the wider range of colors with a laser. Like that is the thing a laser can do right now that a lamp-based system just can't do. Doesn't matter what you do to that lamp, put all the filters you want in front of it. You know, it can't reach the same width of color gamut that a laser light engine can. That's the biggest advantage. Then the others are the lifespan, not dimming as much over time, faster startup and shutdown times. So those are the other logistic considerations. But the laser light engines do tend to generate quite a lot of heat. The ones we're using right now. So
on the upside, though, you can use it as a weapon if you have to. if some sort of futuristic war breaks out, you just pop that out of your projector.
But yeah, that's
So
you can make a laser light engine look like a lamp. You can shrink the color gamut. That you can do quite easily.
In software, you could do that easily. Yeah,
sure.
Mark joined a couple of our Hangout after parties where we chat after the recording session. Rob mentioned his fondness for front wide speakers. Mark has a Denon 3311, and he had tried the front height option before, but had never given the front wide speaker positions a go. He figured he'd temporarily switch from having surround backs to having front wides just to try them out, and it turns out he really liked them.
Yeah, I did
Mark
that.
Fell in love. He's had his eye on a Denon AVR X4300H for a while. He's never heard Atmos at home before, so he was excited to get into a 7.2.4 setup. But now he's heard these darn front wide positions, and the X4300H doesn't offer them. Don't you hate when you find out something you're missing? Yeah. The older X4200W and Marantz SR6010 offer front wides, but those models also top out at 9 speakers maximum. So he could do 9.2, no Atmos, or 5.2.2 plus front wides. But 4 Atmos speakers and front wides wouldn't be an option. I think that's what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So what should he do? Try to forget all about how much he liked hearing front wides? It's like trying to forget about that summer fling you had and that girl that... seems like they really aren't being supported anymore. Will 7.2.4 be a big enough difference over 7.2? It will be a big difference. Will it ever make you stop thinking about the front wides in that magic time you had?
Believe me, Mark, I can commiserate. Now, we just had this announcement from Emotiva. If you want to spend $5,000 and wait however long it takes for their 9.1.6 processing, I mean, they said by the end of the year, but is that the year 2025? It might be in Emotiva time. There's one option, I suppose. We've heard these rumors that Denon and Marantz have new flagship models that they're planning to announce around CES time in early 2018 that will supposedly do 13 channel processing, but we don't know if that's going to be limited to 7.2.6.
Right.
They might limit it to that. Right? They might not allow it to be 9.2.4, which is basically what he's trying to get to.
So
either that or 7.2.4, but the 7 includes front wides instead of surround backs, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Which is actually the setup that I'm running. The setup that I settled on, since I'm in a very small room with not a lot of space behind me, I'm like, if I nudge my surround speakers, my side surround speakers, if I nudge them back a little bit farther to like the 120 degree mark that Dolby recommends anyway, to my hearing, I can get away with not having surround back speakers. But now my surrounds are actually physically farther away from my front speakers, which means the front wides fill in that little gap really, really nicely. So I've got a 7.2.4 setup, but my 7 include front wides instead of surround backs, right? Now, I did that with a Marantz SR7010, and you could do that with the older Denon X6200W. Yeah, it was a 6200W. So you had to go up to the higher model numbers, the X6200W, the SR7010. Those can do front wides minus surround backs and 4 overhead channels. That's exactly what I've got now. Again, according to Scott Wilkinson over at Avius Forum, those models, even though they're older, are supposed to be getting a Dolby Vision pass-through update. So that's nice on the video side. So what you would be giving up versus the newer, say, X4300H or the SR6011, what you'd be giving up would be the Odyssey Editor app, which is a nice feature, but you're still getting Mult-EQ XT32. You just don't have the ability to manually tailor the target curve. That's what the Odyssey Editor app lets you do in the newest models, but not in the 7010 or
no
the
way to do it
6200.
without the app, huh?
No, can't manually tailor, but you know what? I've been living with Odyssey's target curves for a long time, and I still think they're perfectly fine.
Right.
So yeah, you don't get the Odyssey Editor app. You don't get HEOS built in if you want Denon and Marantz's version of wireless whole house audio. That's what HEOS is. That's built into the 4300H. It's built into, well, that's not built into the 6011, so you're not even getting that if you went with a Marantz 6011. So yeah, if you really want front wides, you can go back to that little bit older model. You just have to step up to the SR7010 or the X6200W.
So he can have it all.
You can have it. Well, you can't have surround backs at the same time, but you can have front wides and 4 overhead speakers. That's what I have.
He could get an amp for surround backs, right?
Nope, because you top out at 11 speaker processing.
Okay, so that's
So
it.
you can't do 9.2.4. That's 13 speakers.
All right.
Can't be done right now. Now, content. There are a grand total of 3 Blu-rays that actually have content for the front wide speakers. That was the DTS Neo X releases. And the SR7010 that I have, it doesn't even have a DTS Neo X decoder. So even those 3 releases that actually had content for the front wides are a little bit useless to me now. Now I can use DTS Neural X, which does it fine. So that's fine. Now the Dolby Surround Up Mixer, which you're going to be using a lot if you get an Atmos receiver, doesn't put any sound into the front wides. Nothing.
So what do we think he was listening to? Mark doesn't say what movie or...
He had DTS Neo X in the 3311 that gave you the option of either front heights or front wides.
Okay.
Yeah, so that was a Neo X decoder that was built in there. So you can use Neural X. You can use DTS Neural X. That'll give you sounds coming out of the front wide speakers when you're up mixing anything. And then if you're watching an actual Atmos soundtrack or an actual DTS X soundtrack, sometimes a sound goes into the front wide speakers. That's just if it's panning around you or an audio object happens to go over to that location, you can get sounds coming out of the front wides. But by and large, there is exceedingly little content that genuinely makes use of the front wides, and the only up mixer that you can use is the DTS Neural X up mixer. It's tough to make the argument that front wides are really, really worth it. It's really hard to make that argument. As much as I like them, and I'm the one who got Mark into this position, it's my fault.
Yeah,
Sorry,
you
Mark.
introduced him.
I did.
And he fell in love. Yeah. And it'll never happen again. He'll write songs about it
For the
day.
vast majority of people, I'm like, if you get 7.2.4 Atmos, don't torture yourself.
Yeah.
7.2.4. I mean, if you go to any of the home mixing stages, like all the studios when they're remixing and remastering the soundtracks for the home release, they're doing it on a 7.2.4 or 7.1.4 setup. Right. They're using 4 overhead speakers, the traditional array of 7. They're not using front wides, which means they're rarely putting sounds into the front wide positions. It's really, really hard to make the argument that you ought to have front wides. My best advice to you is go for the 4300H, do 7.2.4. But if you just can't let it go, then you got to step back a model year and you have to go up in the model numbers.
So you got to go back and up. What if he just moves his front speakers wider apart?
Yeah, but then things aren't imaging up front quite the way they ought to.
I just say maybe it's the width. Maybe he's just a width fiend. He just really likes width.
Or save up $5,000 and wait on Emotiva.
There you go. And, you know, they count Martian years at Emotiva, so whenever Mars comes around the sun again.
Or, you know, save up $25,000 and go get a Trinnov Altitude. You can have that right now.
Or just hire some musicians to play off in the corners of your room while you're listening to surround music. Okay, moving on to David B. Now that his basement theater is done, hooray, and he's very happy with it, his wife has said she wouldn't mind updating their living room setup. Wow. Cool. It's 15 by 18 feet, but open to the kitchen and a hallway, so it's gigantic. He figures the total cubic footage is north of 4,000 cubic feet. And his wife really likes to crank up loud music that can be heard throughout the entire house. Cool. My wife does too. They've been using a Sherwood stereo receiver and some old Klipsch Tangent 30 tower speakers that are very large. She got a look at the SVS Ultra Tower speakers and thought they looked a lot nicer, so they're interested in those. Okay. He's a little bit uncertain, though. Will they play just as loud? And what about adding a subwoofer to them? The Ultra Towers have dual 8-inch bass drivers that are side-mounted at the bottoms of the cabinets. Would he still be making use of those dual 8-inch drivers if he adds a subwoofer? I've got side drivers on my speakers that act as a subwoofer. And what subwoofer should he add if that's what he ought to do? I'm going to step away for just a moment and let you talk to him about it. Right.
So I have some trepidation. I mean, the SVS Ultra Towers are really nice speakers, and they can handle a lot of power. However, you don't really have any intention of replacing that Sherwood receiver that's powering this right now, which means you've got, you know, somewhere in the range of 100 watts per channel on tap. You've been used to these Klipsch Tangent 30 speakers, which have 96 decibels per 1 watt per 1 meter. They're very, very efficient speakers, as most full-size Klipsch speakers are. And if you've been used to that, and you've been able to get them to the loud playback levels that you want to just using this Sherwood receiver, I do want to warn you that there's a decent chance you will not be able to get the SVS Ultra Towers to play as loud. Those produce 88 decibels for 1 watt at 1 meter. So they're 8 decibels less efficient. Like I say, if you have a big beefy amp that you can attach to it, a nice 500 watt amp, because the Ultra Towers can accept that kind of power. If you have that kind of amplifier on hand, then you can get them to play basically just as loud. But if you're powering them with that Sherwood receiver, it's going to be a challenge. So my honest advice to you is I would look at getting some new Klipsch Towers. I think the Reference Premier series are a really nice value and really nice looking and actually sound pretty darn nice. You're already used to the Klipsch sound, so I don't think you'd find new modern Klipsch model speakers to be offensive sound-wise. That would shock me if they did. You're getting similar efficiency, but you're getting the slimmer looking cabinet that, you know, will be more visually appealing. That's honestly my best advice to you. You could look at other high efficiency types of speakers, but most of them kind of have a utilitarian look. If you look at Power Sound Audio, JTR, Tecton, these are all high efficiency, but they're all kind of big, black, blocky looking speakers. And part of what you wanted was nicer looking. So that's my real advice. You could consider, again, we talked about HSU earlier in this podcast, their slightly larger HC1, which is meant as a center, but you can use it vertically. There's no reason you can't, but it's not a tower. It's it'd be a large bookshelf. You would consider that. And it's not as efficient as the Klipsch's that you already have. So yeah, the Ultra Towers, They can play just as loud, but you need a whole lot more amplifier than what you have on tap right now. That gives me some pause. I'd point you towards the Klipsch's. Now, the question about you've got these dual 8-inch drivers that are in the Ultra Towers. Will you still be making use of those even if you add a subwoofer to it? Absolutely, yes. The subwoofer is playing up to 80 hertz and then continuing up to about 160 hertz, but it's getting quieter and quieter and quieter as it does so. Those dual 80-inch drivers are starting all the way up. I think it's 350 hertz. I think that's where they cross over to the mid-range drivers. So you got this whole range from 80 hertz to 350 hertz where those dual 8-inch drivers, that's them playing. That's their job.
Yeah.
That's what they're there to do. So you absolutely are not wasting the 8-inch drivers that are in those tower speakers just because you've crossed things over to a subwoofer.
They'll be working.
Completely, yes. They are completely making sound that is very much audible and that your subwoofer is not handling. Should you add a subwoofer to the system? Yes, you should always add a subwoofer.
Always add a subwoofer. What do you think the answer to that was going to be when you asked it of the AVRant podcast? And should I add a subwoofer? Yes.
It does help your receiver a little bit. It takes some of the load of the deepest bass. It's no longer the responsibility of that receiver to power your speakers to do that. You are offloading some of that. Not to the point that I think you can make up 8 decibels of efficiency, though. So I'm still a little bit hesitant there. So yeah, but I think if you got some Klipsch Reference Premier tower speakers that are going to look more slick, but keep a similar sound and have actually even slightly more efficient, I think they're 98 decibels efficient instead of 96, and add a nice subwoofer to that. Now, what subwoofer should you get? 4,000 cubic feet, you're into large room territory, but you don't want to go nuts. I would say like an SVS 2000 series, the ported one. The PB 2000 is probably huge. I'd look real close at a PC, a cylinder, a PC 2000.
Always build the cardboard box.
Yep. And like I say, such good protection. Even if you exceed their output capability, they're not going to bottom out and hurt themselves. So I think a 2000 series ported subwoofer from SVS and some Klipsch Reference Premier towers, and it'd be really nice. Really, really nice.
There you go. All right, moving on to John. John is using a pair of Klipsch. Here comes Klipsch again. John's using Klipsch Icon VF35 tower front speakers. He doesn't have a center speaker at the moment because his 65-inch Sony TV is wall-mounted, and he thinks most center speakers are too large. If he has a center speaker, he wants to wall-mount it, not have it stick out any farther than his wall-mounted TV. But he also wants something that will timbre match his Klipsch towers, and he wants it for under $500. He auditioned a Martin Logan SLM Center at a store, but it was kind of pricey, and the salesperson said he'd probably want to replace his Klipsch speakers if he went with the Martin Logan. He's also considering the Revel M10, but what are our thoughts and any particular models we can recommend? First, I have one question. Could you, if he felt like doing this would be a lot of work, but could you mount it up into the wall? Are there speakers that would be appropriate to push back into the wall? You know what I mean?
Or just do an in-wall center?
Or an in-wall center, yeah.
Yeah. Well, sure.
Does Klipsch make an in-wall?
They absolutely do.
Maybe that's your best match. Just a thought.
But Klipsch also makes an on-wall. That's where my thinking went. It happens to be $500. It's available at Best Buy. And it's it's this very slim. It's called the Klipsch Gallery G28. So it's exactly the price you were looking for. It's exactly the type of design you're looking for, and it's actually quite similar to the old Klipsch Icon speakers in its overall design and appearance.
It's very wide now. If he wants something teensy,
I mean, those are 3.5-inch drivers. Right. So this is a case where it's not as large as it even appears because those are fairly small drivers going on there.
But am I reading that right? 28 inches wide?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you can.
So it's a little over 2 feet wide there. Yeah.
You can make a tiny cardboard box and stick it on the wall.
Sure. But I mean, it's only 2.5 inches deep. So I don't imagine that's protruding much beyond your television, if at all.
Right. That might be a very good option.
Yeah, it's on wall, it's Klipsch, it's the price you wanted to pay. I'm really struggling to point you to anything else.
Perfect match to the situation. Well done,
Buy.
Rob.
So, even if you don't like it, just return it to a Best Buy. So it's not that hard. So yeah, I don't know. Any reason to say something else?
No, man. I mean, I think you nailed it. It's like, what can I use to match my Klipsch speakers with a thin speaker on the wall? There you go.
At $500.
At $500. How about a $500 speaker? They should just name it after John. There you go. He's got another question. His theater area's dimensions work out to 1,824 cubic feet.
He was precise.
How about that? Yeah, that's very precise. But it's open to a kitchen and a hallway, so it's not really 1824.
Definitely not.
It's not. Would dual SVS PB1000 subwoofers do the job? He'd like something that's an upgrade over his 10-inch 200-watt Klipsch SW450 sub. Two PB1000s? I bet it would. It depends on how big this other area is and how much pressurizing we're doing here.
It'd be an upgrade. Will it be a sufficient upgrade is a question, because we got to know that total cubic volume.
Right, because there's no way to tell some air molecules not to vibrate. Sorry, guys, you air molecules over here, you're part of the kitchen. Don't listen to these air molecules over here in the living room.
Yeah. Anywhere the air can move, it will move.
Yeah.
And if you want full pressurization, you have to pressurize the whole space. You can't just say, this is my designated theater area. Don't go beyond there. It's they don't obey that kind of desire.
My goal is to pressurize the neighborhood when I open the windows. That's what I want to do. I want the whole the whole subdivision I live in. Pressurize the earth.
Yeah, so it's really tough to say. We do need to know the size of this kitchen, that hallway. What else does that hallway open up into? If it goes into your front foyer, which then opens up into your second floor, then now you're attempting to pressurize your whole darn house.
Now it's like you live inside a Bose waveguide speaker, basically.
Yeah, and you're going to find out, like, in the bathroom, there's just this tremendous bass mode that...
If you crank up the bass while someone's in the bathroom, you absolutely deafen them. It just happens to work out
that happens sometimes. That's where things gather. So, yeah, I mean, the PB1000s, again, it's the nice thing. Turn them up as loud as they possibly go, and they won't bottom out, so they're nicely protected. They will be an upgrade over your current subs, but without knowing what this actual full space is, we can't tell you if it'll fully pressurize that space, or even if that's desirable. Like I say, if you're completely open to the rest of your house via that hallway, you're not going to want to pressurize the whole house. That's not going to be a pleasant experience. So yeah. You'll have to get back to us with the actual, full opening dimensions. Chances are you won't be able to pressurize the full space with PB1000s. Yeah. They're good up to about, 2,500 cubic feet they can handle. Above that, not so much.
So, yeah, probably not going to work in
Probably
this case,
not. For full, but I mean, that doesn't mean you can't have loud, satisfying bass. We're talking full pressurization, the blur your vision, rattle your teeth type of pressurization.
Hitting the brown note kind of pressurization. Yeah. All right. Andrew on Facebook. Andrew picked up a pair of Paradigm ADP 190 surround speakers. They are a, quote, hybrid design with a dipole tweeter, with dipole tweeters, but bipole woofers. All right, so out-of-phase tweeters, in-phase woofers. Is that what
Correct.
I'm reading that as?
That's absolutely it.
All right. His mounts put them about 3 feet above seated ear level. Should he put them directly at 90 degrees to his sides, or should they be a little bit behind him? My guess would be directly to the sides of you, since you're trying to be in that null for the tweeters, assuming that's what you're shooting for.
Yeah, that is where these speakers are meant to go.
Yeah.
They are meant to go straight out 90 degrees to your left and right so that you are in the null of those dipole tweeters, and you get this very diffuse, like a full-size movie theater where you're far away from a huge array of speakers. That's what they're mimicking. That's the design. That's where they're supposed to go. So that's pretty much it.
All right. He tried using surround back speakers, but he didn't hear a lot of activity in those back channels, which happens, depending on what you're watching, especially. So he figures he'd rather use them as Atmos speakers for a 5.1.2 configuration. Alrighty. He already has wires in his ceiling that would work for the top middle positions, but he could do front heights if that'd be better. Which should he install, front heights or top middles? What is more significant in a 5.1.2 setup?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of, there's not a wrong or a strictly right answer here. It's a little bit of what would you prefer? Because by and large, there tends to be more activity, more sounds put into the overhead in front of you area. That's a choice by the mixers who are making a lot of the soundtracks, but by and large, the overhead Atmos effects, they tend to be putting more sounds that are in front of you.
That's front heights.
So the argument for top fronts or front heights, there's an argument that can be made for that. However, the top middle positions are actually where Dolby suggests putting your speakers if you only have two overhead speakers.
Okay.
Because anything that is overhead, anything that is in those overhead channels, if you only have two speakers, ends up getting played by the only two speakers that you have. So it's not like those sounds just go missing and vanish because you don't
in that
have them.
situation, does front height information, sound meant for front height, does it get blended between front and your top middles? Or
Yeah,
does
it gets played by those top middles because it doesn't get played by your ear level speakers.
Okay, so it doesn't at all get played by your front speakers. I see. All right, so it's all going up there
comes from overhead. So if you really like the sensation of, hey, I really noticed that something came from above me, then top middles are the way to go.
Well, okay, so if you've got two speakers up there, you're getting all of the top middle and all of the front heights in them, no matter where you put them.
Yeah, I mean, if you only have two speakers above you,
yeah,
you're getting all the sounds that are mixed into any of the above you area.
Okay.
Right? It might have been mixed to be above you and behind you, above you and in front of you, or directly overhead. Doesn't matter. When you only have two speakers, whatever those two overhead speakers are, they're getting all of that sound.
Okay, so why not split the difference and sort of mount them in between where top, middle, and front heights would be if all those height information's going up there anyway?
Well, because he already ran the wire.
Well,
in his case, he already has the wires installed.
So he ran wires to both front heights and top middles. Is that what
no,
he's saying?
he ran in ceiling wire to what works out to the top middle position.
Okay.
And then for front heights, he's like, well, he could just put wire up the wall because he could have them on the front wall just up high.
I see.
Right.
Okay, so
yeah,
use the heights you have and just send everything up there.
Yeah, I
Is
mean,
that what you're leaning toward?
What it comes down to is, what would you prefer? Would you prefer the sense that all sounds that are meant to be anywhere above you are coming from the front wall of your room? Or would you enjoy going, hey, those are really right above me? Because, I mean, that's a personal preference thing. There's no right or wrong there.
Right.
What I would say is you're going to notice the top middles more. They're going to be more noticeable because you're going to go, that came from directly above me, and there's never been a speaker there before.
Right. Yeah, especially if you have normal house 8-foot ceilings, right?
Yeah.
So if you had really tall ceilings and put them even higher, I suppose you'd hear those front heights more.
But some people go, I don't like to be that aware of a directional speaker directly above me. I would rather have it coming from the front wall and above. So there's no wrong answer. You decide what you. I mean, you could try.
You could try it. I mean, worst case, you just have a few screw holes where you mounted something up there next to your speaker wires.
And put some ladders up there and do it temporary.
Get two friends to hold them up. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you do it temporary. But if you know for a fact, you're like, hey, I know myself and I know I want to notice that a sound came from above me, then do your top middles if that's the person you are. And vice versa. If you're like, I know I don't want that kind of, I would find that distracting. I don't want to do that. Then don't do it. Do front.
I feel like the difference is the kind of person that likes to add a few decibels to the surround speakers in a normal 5.1.
There's that. Yep.
Like if you like to really notice all the speakers in the room, you might want those top middles.
Exactly.
That's what I would think.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to Carl.
Now, I want to sort of apologize and give credit to Carl because Carl didn't actually specifically ask this question.
Okay.
But he was responsible for the last time we talked about this topic.
Okay.
So I'm giving him credit as having brought up this topic. We are now continuing it without Carl specifically asking us to do so.
So this is just Carl inspired. He's not
Carl inspired. That's very good.
Anything, yeah.
Carl
inspired topic. The HT guys had David Dix from Common Sense Audio on their podcast yet again. This time he tackled speaker myths. And it was a doozy. We must have thoughts about some of the things he said this time. And I bet we do, because Rob told me about this, or asked me about this. Did I hear it? And I told Rob that I was listening to that HT Guys podcast, and I got maybe 90 seconds into this fellow talking. This was the first appearance he made on the show.
Okay.
And, no, I'll give it maybe 2 minutes. And the first second I heard something about bright speaker cables. Off. Like I hung in there past how the electrons travel on the outside of the wire. And you
got through that, eh?
Yeah, I got through that.
I had to pause at that point.
I was hanging in there. I was like, okay. And then he said, bright speaker cable off. So I didn't listen to the rest of it. I'm very grumpy Tom about stuff like that. You know what I mean?
So Carl specifically asked about last time he was on the show, and that one we actually didn't have a ton to nitpick. I mean, skin effect is a real thing. It just doesn't really apply at audio frequencies.
Right.
The bright speaker wire. I mean, it is actually possible to make a speaker wire that attenuates lower. I mean, by and large, you're going to attenuate high frequencies.
That's called a messed up speaker cable.
Very messed up. You'd have to actually add a filter to it because you can't just do it with the wire. But last time they were mostly talking about amplifiers, and we didn't have a lot to nitpick. Now, I very much dislike the forum posts where somebody posts something, their opinion, their take on something, and then the people dissect it line by line. Yeah. I find those type of forum responses pedantic and annoying, and I don't want us to necessarily do that.
So let's do exactly that right now.
Well, what happened here is I started writing down the claims that he made. So this latest one was busting speaker myths.
Yeah, you were just making notes, and they happened to be bulleted exactly like what you just described.
Because it would be really, really hard to purposely have this many wrong statements in a 20-minute period. Like, it was physically painful for me to listen to.
Yeah. You have to have a lifetime of wrongness built up in you.
Now, I want to try to be fair. I know Tom wouldn't bother to try to be fair.
No, I don't. I'll be Tom. I will be Tom because I'm not going to be fair. Remember, I'm the guy who heard bright speaker cable and went
You didn't even get into this one then.
No,
I mean,
I just hit stop. Now I want to listen to this one because I see this list that you would like to talk about. And you know what? Let's, even if you weren't talking about this particular person on this particular other podcast, these would be good things to address that people might have heard.
Okay, I'll take it on that basis. Yeah, because first, I don't want to bash this guy. And more or less, I'm going to try and defend him better than he defends himself, which is to say, he's talking about a certain type of speaker for a certain application.
Sort of.
No, well, he is, and that wasn't explicitly stated. Now that you have to go back to his very first appearance to understand the types of speakers that he makes and sells for the application that he intends them, and realize that that's where all of this is coming from. Now they should state a reminder of that, because when he's making these blanket statements about speakers and materials and designs and stuff, it's sounding like he's saying for any application. Right? If all you heard is this one episode, and that isn't the case, that would be very unfair, right?
Right. Okay.
So that's where I want to try and be fair, but
I'm trying so hard to be nice.
This stuff, oh man, this stuff.
I don't see Rob make this face a lot. He's making this sort of it's like he's grunting a little bit, like a little scrunched up face there.
I'm trying to decide how to approach this, because I was just as we were going through, I was writing down some of these things, and how many bullet points did I end up with here? 30, 25?
I tell you what, we'll do a little role playing. I'll read each of these.
No, we can't do all of them. That's too much.
Okay, I was going to blast through them, but
it's just too much.
Okay. I was going to suggest a way to do it.
Folks, you can go to hdguys.com. It's the HD TV and Home Theater podcast. You can listen to it for yourself.
Yeah, it's a good podcast, by the way, overall. I listen to them.
Yeah. I still listen to them all the time.
Yeah.
What I will say is I can absolutely be wrong about 100% of the things that I say. I have no credentials. All right?
Except intelligence and accuracy, Rob.
But I mean, I don't own any audio company. I have no customers.
Oh, that doesn't mean anything.
I have no formal education in any of this. The only thing I have going for me is if I recommend something or a setup procedure, a product, whatever it is, all I have is it works or it doesn't. Right? That's all I got.
Sure.
Which, in essence, is all science has as well. Science says, here's a hypothesis. You test the hypothesis, and if it turns out your hypothesis is wrong, your hypothesis is wrong. That can be done repeatedly. That's the really important part about science is somebody else on the other side of the world who completely 100% wants the opposite to be true will still come to the same conclusion. Right?
Yeah. I so want to throw a few of these out there, though. I'm reading this list as you're talking, and I'm like,
I will not stop you.
I can't believe it. It's just like the very first one. High power rating isn't good in speakers.
Okay, so again, I don't think he defended himself well enough on this, but he was saying that if there's a high power rating, that basically means that it's low efficiency. And that led on to this whole thing. Okay, here's the statement that he just outright said. He has never heard a bad high-efficiency speaker, and he has never heard a good low-efficiency speaker.
That's nonsense.
Now, this could be a true statement.
Oh, that's yeah. He could have heard a bad one. He could have heard a bad one.
Has never heard, which means he really hasn't heard a lot of speakers. That's what that means.
Yeah.
Because I can name some right now. Okay.
We've talked about some.
HSU's first go at their home-loaded speaker, the HB1 Mark 1. I mean, it wasn't called Mark 1, but you don't need a Mark. But the HB1, the first version of it, was a high-efficiency speaker. That was kind of bad.
Yeah.
I mean, Tom reviewed it and said, these aren't very good speakers. It was high efficiency, wasn't very good.
Sure.
On the other side of the coin, there's Andrew Jones, who's developed some, even the speakers at ELAC right now, not very efficient.
Sure.
But they sound good.
So, in other words, that's just kind of nonsense. Like, here's another one that I know would crack Tom's head in half. Only paper drivers sound good.
Yes.
Nothing else is as good.
Yeah.
Because nothing else can vibrate accurately.
Now, again, didn't
only
defend himself
paper.
terribly well. For his particular thing, which is he believes in the single driver. All right?
Oh,
one
God.
driver producing all of the sound for the speaker, which we talked about previously.
Which is fine
Thanks
if
to
you
Carl.
aim it directly at your head in one spot and you don't move.
And you sit pretty close to him and you don't play him very loud. Because we said there are some really, really good single full-range drivers. We love them. We call them headphones.
Yeah.
Now, they have to be very close to your ears.
And they're aimed
but
directly down my ear canal.
It's
yes.
one driver playing the entire frequency range, and they can sound fantastic.
There you go.
Because they're in headphone. Now, if you're sitting really close to them, not playing them terribly loud, that can absolutely work for a speaker as well.
Right.
So he's talking about his design. All right, he's only works with paper driver. Now, that's
Even in his situation, that doesn't make sense. You could find something. Let me read one more here.
I mean, I just want to mention, okay, materials have properties. They have characteristics to them.
Right.
Right? If you want something that's exceedingly lightweight, so that you can, you don't need very much power to actually move it back. So something exceedingly lightweight, but still stiff, that has good self-damping properties. Well, you might want to try beryllium. That's a metal, but it has those properties.
Sure. And there are
right?
metal tweeters.
There are lots of metal tweeters.
There's aluminum tweeters all over the place.
But listen for yourself. But I mean, if you're cringing, I'm right there with you.
Sure.
I was cringing through a lot of this, but I'm trying to be more fair than I think he was even to himself.
I like the bit where he says he has a, quote, panel of guys who all agree.
Yeah.
Many people are saying... Yes.
Wonder how you arrived at that panel of particular guys, maybe.
And here we go. A subwoofer will never play quality bass like a normal woofer.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
So a driver meant exactly for bass will never play. What does that even mean? It's a driver. No, I don't even understand that.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I mean, there was stuff in here that just on its face you'd go, what? Huh?
He can't say what determines speaker toe in, but start with them slightly toed in, sighted down the inside edge of the speaker. Okay.
I can say what determines speaker toe in.
Yeah, is it aimed in? That's toe in.
Well, no, but I mean, how far it should be towed in. It's the dispersion of the speaker.
Yeah, until you're within the cone
combined
of,
with the reflectivity of your room and your seating position within that room. Yeah, it's complicated.
Yeah.
I guess that's why he can't say, but he keeps talking about he's been doing this for 40 years and he's got all this experience. It's like, but you've never done that. You never just walked up to a speaker and moved your head from side to side and up and down until you heard the point where the dispersion changed, where the timbre changed because you got off axis. Well, since he makes single drivers that are 15 inches in diameter that are playing all the way up to 20 kilohertz, the second you move a centimeter off axis, you've changed the directionality of that thing. So maybe that's the reason.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like the bit about good speakers should be close to the wall or the corner, no matter what.
Because it increases the bass. He went into all this stuff about the only reason you have a cabinet on a speaker is to increase the bass output. I'm like, really? Not to prevent the dipole, like if like you have these open baffle speakers, right?
Yeah.
But they act as a dipole, which means directly to their sides there's an outright null.
Yeah.
Which
And
again,
it
if that's what
reflects
you
off the wall behind it, unless that's dampened
That's right.
somehow. So
if that's what you wanted to design, fine. But if it isn't what you wanted to design, you might want to put a cabinet around that mid-range and tweeter. Like it's just like these are just wide general things. And again, he couches it all in, in my experience. Like, okay, fine. I can't say that you are lying because in your experience this is the case. But
in
like
his
I say,
experience, yes. I think what happens to people is there's a lot of people. These folks that I don't want to generalize. That's not fair. But I'm telling you what, I see a lot of older guys that have been doing it for a long time.
Especially the subwoofer thing. It's
and
like,
they've been
really?
doing the same thing for a long time, and a few things have worked for them. And I want to make sure that as I get older, and I suggest to everybody else as they get older, to stay, open to ideas. And I think just people get locked into what they've had some pleasure or success with.
Well, I have to say the one that actually bothered me, because I just think it's bad advice, because he even said, this is something I want your HT guys listeners to be aware of. This is how you ought to do it. Now again, he's talking about a music only system, stereo only, close to you, not playing very loud, all of which I'm like, wow, that's a lot of caveats to put on. What if I want to play my music loud? That's just, you can't. Don't do it.
That's wrong.
Paper drivers only, no cabinets. But yeah, where he was saying what you should do is have your speakers play as low as they possibly can, and only then can you add a subwoofer to handle the very lowest frequencies below 30 hertz that the speakers themselves just cannot reach. It's like,
It's because he doesn't believe in processing inside amplifiers, apparently, receivers. It's because he's from the 70s.
Well,
That's why he believes that. He's from the 1970s. Even in the 70s, you could design an analog. Anyway.
We've been battling that advice for so long on this podcast. And again, I will only come back to this. He could be completely right, and Tom and I could be completely wrong.
No.
Please try it for yourself.
He's not completely right.
I know, but try it for yourself, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one. We are on polar opposite sides of opinion of this thing, okay? But it doesn't matter which of us you believe. It doesn't. Reality doesn't care.
Yeah. However, what we've learned, and I said I wasn't going to mention politics, is that there are a lot of people in this world that the more you show them reality and evidence, the harder they lock into their views. And it works in politics, and it works in audio, it works in computer, it works in every aspect of life. Some people, they have such cognitive dissonance when you show them contrary evidence that they lock in harder.
But
so I think once you see somebody go over the edge and talk about bright speaker cables, just walk away. That's why I hit stop. I knew I wasn't going to hear anything sensible as soon as I heard bright speaker cable. Hit stop and walk away. Don't even try. Done.
But hearing Ara say that he has, to this point, followed all of the advice, which is you get your subwoofer set up nicely so that you have, I mean, in his case, he's only got one, so he's getting, as linear response as he can at his seating position, and then setting a crossover to 80 or 85 or 90 hertz in his case, which is what he was doing. He's like, I'm glad you said that, because now I'm going to try setting all my speakers to a 30 or a 40 hertz, the lowest that it'll go. I was like, oh man, but yes, go ahead and do it. Go ahead and do it. Do the experiment for yourself.
Yeah.
Because science doesn't care who you believe.
That's right.
It is repeatable results, so absolutely do it for yourself.
At least in audio, unlike politics, your own decisions at the end, once you've done all your tests and you decide what you like, doesn't affect anybody else except maybe the people that live with you listening to your stuff. Have a good time. Knock yourself out. Don't get crazy and angry about it like I tend to almost do.
But ultimately, it's so ironic to call this busting myths when I'll couch it in my opinion. All he did was perpetuate some really long existing myths about speakers and design and subwoofers and
you may as well pull out
stuff.
the green magic marker and draw that line around the CD. Do you remember that one when people were drawing the green Sharpie?
Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Man, oh man, it's painful. It's painful.
And
like,
on that
man.
note of pain and anger and non-reality, I think that's about all I can do this evening.
Absolutely.
Rob.
Well, that was the last question. We got
go.
through everything on our list. We did have questions that came in on this Monday, so not to worry if you wrote to us on Monday or late on Sunday night.
Right. This is Hurricane Monday, so it's a kind of a weird week for the podcast, and we hope Tom the best. He's okay. He came through just fine, and he's going to do okay. I hope he gets power, and I hope he eats well and is comfortable, and I hope insurance pays for anything it needs to pay for and that sort of thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we want to thank our listeners of the week. Clint DeBoer, huge shout out to you for helping out Tom. Nothing beats that. Your listener.
A guy that knows a lot about tools is the guy you want in a disaster.
And a lot about audio.
Yeah.
I mean, we should get Clint back on here at some point. He's part of the original AVRant crew. So, yes. But I also want to thank Josh Pollard from the Digital Media Zone. Talked us up to Accessories for Less, and want to thank Christian and Chris for noticing that SVS has us listed right there on their very own survey. So there you go. That's nice to hear about. So we are AVRant. We're your home theater and AV questions answered. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask. It's question@avrant.com. That's our email address. Please email us there. That's how you get your question onto the podcast. So I won't belabor it any longer. I'll just, once again, if folks want to get in touch with you, Lee, how can they do that?
You can find me on Twitter @LeeOverTweet on Twitter.
Very good. So all our other contact information is back at the beginning of the show. Want to thank our producer, Austin, working very hard behind the scenes at Austin Pond. He has his own podcast. It's We Watch Movies. What's that about?
Oh, that was the legal issues involved with organic dairy farming.
There it is. Yeah, We Watch Movies. What else would it be? Well, Lee, thank you so much for filling in. Really do appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. I figured it might happen given the hurricane situation. We are currently getting the last little dregs of Irma here in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
You're staying safe too, right? Didn't lose power through this
thing. We're good. No, we're solid. It's all good. It's just sort of a messy day. That's it.
Well, on behalf of Tom Andry, for AVRant, I'm Rob H.
And I'm Lee Overstreet. Now go out and listen to something.